Welcome, everybody, to the 22nd episode of the Deadliest Warrior podcast. I'm your host today, Craig Taylor, joined by my co-hosts.
I'm Lucas. They're representing the French Musketeers today.
Yeah, I am Matt. I will be representing the Ming Warriors.
And joining us all the way from Kansas City, now live and in person.
Scott, nice to be here.
Yes.
You guys may recognize Scott from the William Wallace Zulu episode, coming into us at, 2 frames a second?
Yeah, or you may not recognize me.
Yeah.
You might.
That's just how he talks.
So is it Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas?
It's Missouri.
Dang.
There is a Kansas City, Kansas, though, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah, that's true. We have today a iconic matchup. I think since Deadliest Warrior started, I've always said, what if they put a Ming Warrior with a Musketeer? I think I'm not alone in that. What do you guys think about this matchup?
Honestly, here's the deal. On paper, it's not like a very exciting matchup, in my opinion. However,
On the show, neither is. I'm just kidding.
I'm going to bring some posy vibes. I actually really ended up enjoying this episode, and I really ended up enjoying all the research I did for it, too. The Ming was really fascinating to research. So
I assume you didn't know like too much about the Ming Dynasty, so those are fun to research when you don't know.
Yeah, I knew nothing. The basic history I knew was like before like modern China, there's been a variety of like kingdoms that have rose and fallen over the ages, and I knew the Ming Dynasty was a period of time, and that was like it. And so diving into it, I was like, this is really cool, and looking at a lot of the Ming weapons was really cool. And honestly, the weapons they bring on this episode and the tests, like the entertainment factor, I think is really jacked up. So in a good way, I mean, like amped up.
Yeah.
So,
well, this one, I don't think I watched it back in the day. Like, I imagine at the lunch table, I was like, hey, what was the episode? And you guys said, Ming Warrior versus Musketeer. And I said, okay, I don't have to watch that.
Yeah, I have to admit, like, I watched it like when it came out and then hadn't watched it like since. And it's been kind of a punchline for me ever since. Like, I would always joke about, season 2, they were running out of ideas, Ming versus Musketeer. And I guess that's just because you don't think of them as regularly as something like a knight or a samurai or something like that. But, I was really pleased going back and rewatching it. I was like, low key, this is a good episode.
Let me tell you, no real big meme came out of this episode, so that's why it never stuck in my brain.
Yeah, that's
the episodes with the big memes are the ones that like stuck with me.
Stiletto.
The whole time. Yeah. Stiletto, Zondays.
There's still some fun stuff. Scott, what are your thoughts on this episode?
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's middle of the ground, not good, not bad. Like you said, there's nothing big moments that stick out in your mind. There's some exciting weapons, like the Ming brings some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I think the Musketeer kind of falters where it's just a musket. I don't know. We've seen flintlock stuff on the show before with the pirate. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just,
there's so much about his kit that is just the pirate. Like the grenade and the flintlock. It's very piratey.
Yeah.
Just to tantalize the audience a little bit for our bigger fans, like, we did the Back for Blood special for season 1, and I think we were definitely thinking about what if we do like a fanfic Back for Blood season 2, and we definitely thought about like creating a middle category for the pirate. The problem is, like, I looked at like their weapons. I was like, the Musketeer is who would fight the pirate probably, because he's like the only other gunpowder guy. And I'm like, it's just like the same. It's like wheellock versus flintlock, blunderbuss versus flintlock rifle. Like
it's just a picture of that era, though. I don't think they're necessarily as similar. They're just loadouts are kind of
exactly.
They're Call of Duty, custom loadout.
I was just thinking for us sitting at the table, like who would win. It kind of would, yeah. Well, you guys are probably going to see that. We probably will do it, but yeah, it'll be interesting.
I think I would have a really good argument to why the pirate would win that pretty easily.
I'm sure you would. So, because they're the modern day Delta Force.
Yeah,
Not the modern day, but
the Musketeers modern day special force.
I was going to say, I have the quote right here. The Musketeers were the special forces of the 17th century.
Weren't we all?
So Starting off with the intros, the narrator calls the Ming Warrior the merciless 14th century weapons innovators who... I wrote this wrong.
Launched China's greatest dynasty.
They autocorrect fucked me there. I was like, and the Musketeers are the king's ruthless personal guard and fierce defenders of France's borders. So let's start off with giving some stats on the Ming first, and then some history. So the Ming Warriors, the reign of terror was 1368 to 1644, which I'll say real quick, there is no consistency to how these stats are formatted.
No.
Like, you get eras, you get height and weight sometimes you get allegiance. Like, there's no,
It's
Reign of terror.
It's just thrown in to be fun, you know? It's
Yeah.
funny.
We also, I sent it earlier in the group chat, and I don't know if any of you listened to it, but in the intro for the show this time, we do get what I call the Twisted Metal 3 death sound like 6 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
Yeah, I have some things to say about that too.
Yeah. Height for them 5'7", short king, weight 150 pounds, armor leather lamelier. Before we get into the Musketeer stats, Matt, do you want to give us a little bit of background on the Ming?
Yeah, so I guess do you just want me to cover these stats or go into history?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay, so it's 1368 to 1644 is just the historical time period of the Ming Dynasty. As far as the height and weight goes, we've talked about it on the show before. It seems to be kind of a random stat that I feel like Max makes it up for like balancing issues, you know, like one guy's going to be shorter, one guy's going to be bigger, but let's still try to keep it even. I would bet like during these time periods, guys were shorter and smaller than this even.
What was the height stat for the Ming?
5'7", 150.
That's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. I thought they would be like the old 5'2" that they give like most of the like Asian area type warriors.
You know, we don't have like medical records or anything from back then, but people were shorter the farther you go back, and you know, because they didn't have all this good chow mountain, you know,
Mountain Fizz,
no live wire, no free ads, to bulk up and make them big and strong. The last thing I'll say is leather lamellar. Incorrect. Not the Ming's armor. The Ming had a superior armor to leather lamellar, but I'll harp more on that when we get to the wheel lock test.
Dang.
Yeah.
I have a theory why they're using leather lamellar.
Was there a story associated with it?
No, there's no story, but I'm pretty sure this was Attila the Huns armor. And I think they make it just like the Mongols armor too, maybe. I can't recall right off the top of my head, but I know it was Attila the Huns armor. And in their minds, like all these people are just the same warriors. So the Ming had like steel and stuff incorporated into their armors. So I'll get more into that when we get to the armor section.
Cool. So a little bit about Musketeers. So Musketeers 1622 to 1776, great year. Height 5'9", weight 160 pounds, armor steel cuirass, and they called them the 17th century special forces. Any information you found about the Musketeer?
They taste delicious.
They are very good.
We all have Three Musketeer bars at the table tonight.
They have less assets than a Milky Way.
Spread positivity, hashtag throw shine. Only free ad we'll get.
Yeah, it's the only free ad you're getting.
Yeah. Anything you found interesting about the Musketeers?
Nothing super interesting. Everything they say in the show seems pretty straightforward. Louis XIII was the one who created them, King of France. They were like his personal like royalty bodyguards. Probably around like 150 to 300 of them at any time. Yeah. And they were just probably more specialty trained, came from lines of nobility.
When I saw like the dates and they were talking about Louis XIII, and I've been listening to a Napoleon podcast to get ready for that season 3 episode, and
they'd be like 3 fucking hours.
Yeah, they talk about France like before Napoleon and stuff, and all I can think of when Louis XIII comes up is that Rihanna song, Bitch Better Have My Money, because she has a line in it where she's like, Louis XIII, and it's Craig, put a clip in.
Louis XIII.
Oh. It got copyrighted.
Oh, man.
Dang.
Stick around for, I'll tell a Louis the 13th story maybe on the Pretty Good podcast.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess anything you want to say, Lucas?
Yeah, I found I will say you had to do some real deep dives on these French Musketeers. They were also named the Musketeers of the Guard, or King's Musketeers was like the real name. They were the elite fighting company of the military branch of the Maison du Roi, the royal household of the French monarchy, and they have a motto of "Crurit et Lethum," meaning fall.
All for
there
one,
is
one
death.
for all.
Yeah,
What is it? Isn't that the Musketeer motto?
I think from the book Three Musketeers. That's what they say. But the motto means "to fall there is death."
It's not as fun.
Wore an early type of military uniform. It's pretty accurate to what they wear in the show. And it had a tabard indicating they belonged to the king. They were in support of the Catholic cause. This was important because the embroidered white cross was denoting that the fact that they were formed to stop the Huguenot rebellions, which was a Protestant rebellion in France, which is essentially why they were formed. Phone rings. Hello, this is Charles from Dealer Services. Fuck off, spam call. That is my little Easter egg of
When you were doing
when
your
I'm dictating my notes.
voice recording.
Charles, can you tell right those the Deadliest Warrior podcast?
I really tried hard to find any notable battles that they were in. The only one I could find by name was they fought in the city of La Rochelle when Louis XIII besieged the Huguenots, the Protestants there. I could not find any other name battle or sieges.
I actually found one that they really royally fucked up.
Well, what's this
They are
one?
friends.
It's called the Siege of Candia, which is a city in Crete, and the Ottomans have spent like 20 years besieging this city, and finally the French decided to go and help these Venetians fight off the Ottomans. So they decided that going into the port at night would be too cowardly, so they went right during the day and got shot by cannons.
Genius.
And then later they decided, let's go for a cavalry charge. They went out, got murdered, and then the Ottomans took like all their possessions and whatnot and sold it, and that was able to fund the siege for like 2 more years.
Oh, no.
Immediately they left and said, this city is undefendable, even though it was standing for like 20 years. It was, that was probably the low point.
Chalk that up in the win category. So
What about their armor? Their breast armor did not help in that situation?
Oh, no, not from cannons.
I want to see that test.
Yeah.
So get ready. Here come the thing. Get ready to buckle into this roller coaster here. So in 1646, they were disbanded, but they were revived in 1657 as one of the most prestigious of the military companies. In 1776, Louis XIV disbanded them for budgetary reasons. They were reformed in 1789, but were disbanded shortly after the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Then they were reformed July 6th, 1814, but disbanded January 1st, 1816. And finally reformed one more time by Mars Incorporated as a chocolate-covered fluffy whipped mousse candy bar. Little note, the Three Musketeers book written 1844 when it was published in a newspaper, just kind of piece by piece. And it was written about Alexandre Dumas, who is an actual French musketeer.
Could you imagine you're reading the Three Musketeers and right next to the Spider-Man like comic, like Beetle Bailey? I gotta read my Three Musketeers, honey, while I have my coffee.
If you want to learn any more about them, just read the Three Musketeers book or eat a candy bar. I got one little Easter egg I wanted to point out. At exactly, if you go to 107 in the show, we get a shot of Max fake executing Jeff while he works on something with the French pistol. It's like a blink and you miss it. He's behind Jeff and he goes.
That's a good find.
It's great. Yeah, it was like a blink and you miss it and I rewound it.
Yeah,
Like,
I
that
didn't
is
see
awesome.
that either.
I hope you
That's
guys
just show you
appreciate
after.
how much we pour over every frame of these fucking episodes.
Someone has to do it.
We
Yeah.
do. Our minds have been made sick from it. If you've ever played Call of Cthulhu, there's like an insanity meter, and we are at 0. We're insane.
Yeah, it's hard to tell if these episodes are even fun anymore because not the podcast, but like watching the show, like doing research is so because you have to pause it, type something up for 10 minutes and then unpause it, and it takes like you cannot enjoy the show that way. And it's I've had this conversation with you. I don't know if we'll go back to ever watch the show after I bought every single episode, every single aftermath. Will I ever watch a show again? I don't know.
I think we will. It'll take a little bit, but we'll watch it again, and we'll remember every little thing we brought up on the podcast, and it will be even funnier.
I hope so.
I still enjoy going through this stuff. We find so many gems through here, and I always look forward to talking to you guys about it. So
yeah,
1 minute, 7 seconds, max execution.
I'll put it in. So, moving on to experts, which experts might be my favorite segment, to be honest, because you find the craziest shit. Not too juicy, this one, but you know. So we have Xavier Declis, who David Wenham pronounces Xavier Declis. The show says he served in the French Foreign Legion, thank you, and was an expert in sword fighting. My research, he was maybe the first expert to ever autofill off of Google. Even Anthony the Longest, I don't think, came up after I started typing in his name. He's in a bunch of movies you would probably see on Best of the Worst. Like if you look through his IMDb, it's all like those fake movies. Yeah. And he's now a trainer, bodybuilder, and fitness consultant. And I've also, for all these experts, I found like their Instagram too, so they're very active.
Yeah, that's basically everything I found. He won like some gold medals in martial arts arenas too. He has 3 black belts. But
I saw on his IMDb, the one thing I couldn't find was his credit in Deadliest Warrior. He doesn't put that in there.
That's usually a good thing.
Come on, Zavi.
Yeah. Moving on to Luc Lafontaine. He is called a Swordmaster. He says the Musketeers fought 24 hours a day, and they developed a reputation based on how many people you killed. In the explanation of who the Musketeers fought, we just get a map of France. Like, I can understand
everyone.
If we're talking about like the expansion of like an empire, but like they have to show a map and they just show here's France. So, and also there's some B-roll of like the Musketeers fighting. I'm almost positive this is the same castle as the night one.
It definitely is.
Yeah,
I was thinking
the
that
Crusade
too.
Castle. Yeah. So, in the research for Luke, he is a stunt actor. There's a video online from some YouTube channel. It's really popular. I don't remember the name. It's like Collision, I think. And they're doing analysis of like 30 movie scenes evaluated by a real stunt actor. Like,
I hate those videos. I mean, I love those videos. Sponsor us.
Yeah, but he's on one of those, and I was like, that's interesting.
Can I just say that the Musketeer model that they use looks so much like PewDiePie? I just kept thinking it every time he popped.
Oh, like the main character in like The Sim?
Yeah, who like, spoilers, wins at the end. Like he's the main actor in all the shots. Yeah, I was like, is that PewDiePie is the French Musketeer guy?
I love when they make like a main character out of all like the B-roll actors.
Yeah.
I laughed when they were doing the expert introduction. Like first you get Xavier. He's got a thick French accent. He looks like a lower version of like Fabio.
Yeah.
And then they go Luc Lafontaine, and he looks and sounds like a background character on The Sopranos. Like he's got like this like Jersey Italian accent. It's like, the Musketeers were the best fighters in all of France.
It seems like somebody who is not French but is like France like aficionado and knows all the stuff about France.
I looked a little bit of him up. Let me see if I could find him. But he was like a safety and stunt advisor and like weapon advisor for earlier episodes. So they were probably just like, oh, you already work on the show and you have a French last name, so you can be the Musketeer.
As we know, that's like one of the 3 categories that they use to pick experts. It's always like
someone who just works behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You want to do it?
That's
Sure.
like anytime we can't find something on a lot of people, or sometimes we do with Luke's case, like, you know, it's just like they just worked on the scene.
Yeah, I had he was safety advisor. They continued him all the way till like the 3rd season of Deadliest Warrior. So he was just someone who worked on the show.
I wonder if we'll see him appear as a stunt actor in the Napoleon episode. We'll have to see.
Probably.
Maybe.
He worked on Iron Man also.
I was going to say, he only movie I recognized was Iron Man, and like Danny Boyer, he also has a page on the MCU wiki.
Nice.
So he apparently did voices for the RE2 remake.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. You know, I love bringing up Resident Evil anytime I can.
Yeah, I try finding him in the game. It's like, but like, is he really a voice actor? I mean, I could see him doing like mocap, but he said he was a voice actor. He was
actually safety advisor for Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and they're just like, you want to do a voice?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I was confused.
Safety,
What?
safety advisor for the video game. His first film, I was reading a brief interview with him, was The Karate Kid, and he was supposed to be Danny's first opponent, but since he had no guardian present, he had to be replaced. But he's still in the movie as a background extra.
Dude, he's never forgiven his dad.
That's
for that.
probably like an Uncle Rico moment. Like, man, if my guardian was just there, I would have been in the Cobra Kai series now, not Billy Zabka.
That's like Harry Potter going up to Professor McGonagall. Can you sign my permission slip so I can go to the Honeydew Inn or whatever the hell she goes, the Hogsmeade or whatever that.
Dude, and then that part's crazy, and she goes, Avada Kedavra.
Oh,
all right. Anyways,
Harry Potter talk. And so he's part of a genre, and this is not a knock on Luke, but just a different type of expert. Certain people, I imagine, like getting work in Hollywood is very hard, and I think certain people have like every single database they insert themselves into. So IMDb, they're right there in IMDb. Where I saw it for the Resident Evil was like voice actors database, but he has like one credit of, so clearly nobody put like, oh, Luke Fontaine's in this. And so I feel like it just is an aspect of acting where you just try to put yourself in every single like acting database and stuff.
build your resume.
Yeah, which is interesting. I'm not knocking him, but it's just another type of expert. And nothing he says is really arrogant like some of the experts. So he doesn't claim to be anything.
Yeah,
he's
Luke,
not.
pretty cool.
Come on the show.
Come on, Luke.
Come on, Luke. Get on the show.
Tell us about the stunts in Deadliest Warrior. So that's it for the Musketeers. We are introduced to the Ming squad, and they're both furiously punching and kicking the air, but not in like a shadow boxing way, but like your drunk uncle at the barbecue.
Slap boxing.
Yeah, he's like,
I wrote that like in their intro, they're just going ham and like yelling and like kicking targets. But yeah, when they first show them, it is like,
If that was me in the fight, I'd go.
yeah, like the drunk guy at the bar at the UFC fight, like watching it, he's like, "This is what I do to Conor McGregor."
just put me in with Derek Lewis, man. I'll take him down.
It's my Irish blood.
Another round.
Yeah. So we're introduced to Jonathan Waizeng Wang. I think I wrote that down right.
Yeah.
He's listed as a Kung Fu champion. It says he's a world champion in Tai Chi and Kung Fu. Well, David Wenham says that. The research is the dude's got a lot of awards. Like I looked at he I think runs a martial arts gym in Santa Monica, and they have all his awards, and it's like a shit ton. So he's legit. And then finally, we got Philip Dang, who is, I found the most on him. He's listed as a combative wushu champion, and he looks like a Final Fantasy character. So, from what I found, he is a stunt actor, and he was in Mulan, was one of the movies, the new Mulan remake.
The new Mulan.
So, now I'm also pretty sure he's Vietnamese. Like, because he speaks Vietnamese on his YouTube channel, which he has. Dang, I'm pretty sure is a Vietnamese last name, and it doesn't mean he like if you're Vietnamese you can't know a lot about the Ming. But I think it's more of the show being like, oh, look, you probably know about China, right?
Well,
like
I will say that the Ming Dynasty did conquer Vietnam. Like they owned the territory of Vietnam.
Okay, so
yeah,
maybe I'm wrong, but
so technically he is a Ming descendant.
Yeah,
as the show would moniker.
Yeah. So I found some interesting videos. I'll put them in the edit. I won't bother because it'll take us forever to watch them here. But he has on his Instagram. He said he had a YouTube channel with 1.7 million subs, which I was like,
cool.
That's a lot. And it's a lot of his videos.
We need to get Philip on the show.
He has it's a Vietnamese YouTube channel, and his most popular video is the sketch from like 2013, very early era YouTube style. It's like this sketch about basically if Superman was an asshole.
Khỏe không mày? Má khỏe con cặc, đủ má lần nào tao kêu mày đến nhà tao mày đi nhẹ nhẹ thôi Phi. Đủ má mày đến nhà tao mày làm lũng biết bao nhiêu cái lỗ rồi, đủ má tao chém chết con đi mẹ tao luôn mày, đủ mày mất dạy quá mày. Tao quên hoài à? Ê, mày có vài đồng mà cho tao mượn không?
I think is like the
Okay.
Just wedging people.
yeah, like Google Translate doesn't really help with the thing, but it has 87 million views.
Wow.
Dang. Philip, dang.
That's almost as many views as the Observing Lions on Planet Zoo.
Well, yeah, one day. But that's like a weekend music video has like 87 million views. Like it's crazy. I recommend watching that. I'll put in some inserts. He lives in Atlanta, Georgia now. On his Instagram, he has a video where, dude, he fucking owns a scam caller. It's a scam texter saying it's like some hot chick and it's like automated responses. And he calls them back and he leaves like a voicemail, but he uses a fake like broken English, like Vietnamese accent. I'll put it in. It's very like he fucking owns this dude.
So I just received a text from some random number from this chick who asked if I'm Ali from Hinge and wants to meet up with me. And I go, you know, I'm not Ali. This isn't me. And she goes and proceeds to send me a picture of herself and asks to hang out. So this is some sort of new elaborate scam. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to contact Amanda.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hello, this Amanda? Hello, this Philip. I just have you text me and your name, you want Ali, but my name Philip. So I'm just a Vietnamese guy. You know, I don't have a lot of girlfriend. And, you know, I just want you to know that I can hang out with you on a maybe Tuesday when I don't work at the restaurant. And I have many people at the food. And so if you want, just maybe text me or call me back, and then we go have a good time. And maybe, you know, I never see a girl like you in the picture. So, you know, okay, bye. All right, I hope Amanda calls me back.
So
Was it Charles from Dealer Services again?
could have been.
That's like the Joey Salads. It's just a prank, bro era of YouTube.
Yeah, well, this was an Instagram from like an Instagram video from like a month ago or a few months ago.
Never
so
mind.
It's him just being like, fucking scammer, I'll show him. So he was also
We've all been there, to be fair.
yeah. He's also in, there was a live action short film to promote the game Sifu, which is a really high game this year. And he is henchman number 3 in it.
Nice.
So, shout out. And I believe I found his TikTok where he mostly posts videos of Chris Rock dubbed over in Vietnamese.
Và tất cả mọi người đều muốn biết là mấy thằng nhỏ nó nghe nhạc gì, và cái thể loại game nào mà mấy tụi nhỏ đang chơi, và cái thể loại phim nào mà tụi nó coi. Tụi nó coi con cặc gì thì kệ mẹ tụi nó chứ.
So
He's not hitting Corvettes or anything like that?
no, here I will try to, if this link works. It's some funny shit. So it's either his YouTube channel or TikTok or his friends.
I feel like I'm going to get canceled if I laugh at this.
Oh, it's Chris Rock's stand-up, but he's just doing it in Vietnamese.
So is he just like translating it for?
Yeah, I guess so, but it was funny.
Well, at least all I can say is at least it's not Kevin Hart's stand-up. Insert slide whistle.
Yes, or Chris D'Elia.
Oh, yes.
So Jonathan says that Ming would cut off ears and collect them as trophies. Is that something that you found, Matt?
Yeah, so I wrote a little about that. I have a whole section of history I figure we'll get to, but the note I took on that was for collecting ears, like it's not out of the question. Even up into modern times, soldiers will often desecrate an enemy's corpse to claim trophies. I found this stat out. Like, did you know in World War II, 60% of Japanese bodies that were returned to the mainland were missing their skulls because like American soldiers would take them? I had no idea about that. It's crazy. Anyways, so it still goes on in modern era is what I'm saying. And I couldn't find any direct evidence or research that said the Ming particularly did this the way the show claims. What I did find, though, when you look into like ear collecting in the Ming Dynasty, is there is this controversial temple in Kyoto, Japan, that is called the Mimizuka, which translates to ear mound. and it is a shrine to the collected noses and ears that the Japanese soldiers took from Korean soldiers and Ming Dynasty soldiers during the Japanese invasion of Korea from 1592 to 1598.
It's like the Iron Throne, but like for the bunch of ears.
Yeah, it's obviously like very controversial, and it's sort of like tucked away in Kyoto, but it's just kind of awkwardly there, and they've never taken it down.
Too much effort into that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you have to like, because that's just cartilage, that would eventually like deteriorate. You'd have to like preserve.
Well, no, it's a regular, like, it's made out of stone. Like, it's not a bunch of ears. Like,
oh, I thought it was literally just like,
that too.
yeah,
No,
I thought it was like a room just full of ears.
no, it's not a bunch of ears. It's just a stone temple, but that's why it's kind of weird. It's like you would make a statue of George Washington commemorating him. It's like, here's a statue to all those ears you guys brought back.
Yeah.
Love me some ears.
Yeah.
Sam. Well, we're about to get into the weapons. So, Matt, do you want to do your movie time recommendations real quick?
Yeah, I can do movies, and like I said, I got a lot of history I got to do at some point.
I got a little short note I'll slap in before we get to.
Go ahead.
You could do your
okay.
stuff first.
Movies. It's Matt's movie corner. You guys know I try to give you
Brendan, play the movie music.
Yeah, some.
What movie music?
Just press one of the buttons.
Da, da, da,
Which one was that?
It was the intro for the pretty good.
Here we go. Yeah.
All right, guys. So, movies for if you want to find like some contemporary entertainment. Here's the deal, guys. Alexander Dumas's book, which has already come up, The Three Musketeers. There has been a lot of movie adaptations of that. Adaptation getting looser and looser as time goes on. There's a very critically acclaimed 1921 silent movie called The Three Musketeers. I did not watch that.
Oh, I'll be sure to watch that. Sounds really good.
Because I don't want to. But if
Is
there's
that on
any,
Disney Plus?
I'm not sure. But if there's any film buffs, check it out. Since then, there's been a couple like Three Musketeer movies. There was a 1993 film starring Charlie Sheen.
Pre-Coke. Well, maybe.
in a 2011 film directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who, if you don't know, is the guy that directed the first AVP movie and all of the Resident Evil movies. And it's starring like Orlando Bloom and a few other people. And if you just look at the cover of this thing, the vibes it's giving off is like, if you remember Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman or The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, like it looks exactly like those movies. And so I was like, I'm not going to watch these, and I can't in good conscience recommend them. So here's what I will recommend. I know you guys are going to hate this. I would recommend you just read the Three Musketeers book.
Ooh, this isn't book time?
I know, I know. And
if that book was in front of me right here, I'd go
look up the Tom and Jerry cartoon, the two Musketeers, to see Jerry and his friend Nibbles get up to some adventures. For the Ming, there is no standout piece of like cinema that takes place for the Ming Dynasty. I found a lot of B movies and a free multi-part documentary on YouTube that I was not going to watch. The best I can give you is that Disney's Mulan, okay, the animated one, is meant to cover like an unspecified era of Imperial China. However, the movie starts with the Great Wall built, okay, which doesn't really make any sense because the Huns are invading, but the Huns never invaded China. The Great Wall gets built after the Ming Dynasty has already kicked the Mongols out of China. So you could technically say this is a Ming Dynasty movie. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's a better movie than any of the ones I've just listed to you. And it does feature multiple rockets, including a nest of bees in the movie.
ooh.
What's the movie?
The animated Mulan, 1995.
What's that? Who makes that?
Yeah.
Or you know what too? As a little bonus, you could do the live action right after and see Philip.
Yeah. Or if you want, it doesn't have to do with the Ming Dynasty era, I'm pretty sure, but you could just play Dynasty Warriors, Romance of the Three Kingdoms.
Civ probably has all these warriors. You ever noticed too that like every single Asian expert is in Mulan? Like at least most of them I've noticed are in the Mulan remake.
They're getting work, man. That's good.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
Yeah, I want to touch on just a couple things that we're going to dive back into some French Musketeers here. So, whenever the experts are, doing their little pieces, they claim that they fought the British, the Spanish, the Belgium, and the Swedish. Why is there no conflicts listed online? I just want to drive that home. It's been said like 3 times already. Why is there no conflicts pretty much listed besides like these couple sieges? If they have this like 200... This is like my first grievance for this episode. If there's like 200 years, there should be some like more documented battles or something. But it kind of brings me to this point that I want to bring up. I think the French Musketeers, yes, they did battle a little bit, but I think they were almost a little bit of like royal guard, a little bit for show. And we're kind of get into that a little bit with a touch of their weapons. But I mean, there's only... we said 150 to 300 of them also active at any time. And then they say that they won like every battle for France. 200 men approximately won every battle for France. And
I feel like they're just very heavily romanced because of the book.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I feel like they just completely took from Three Musketeers book. And they're like, let's use this. Let's make an episode out of it. But are we going to do the X Factors too?
When do they get?
I don't even remember.
I don't. They
do a quick little.
It's after the first weapon set.
Is it?
So
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
Craig, you're running the show here. I know you want to get into weapons. Do you want me to go into the Ming Dynasty history here? I just have like 2 paragraphs.
Okay.
Okay, just to get it in before the weapons. I know you guys want to get to the weapons. We do too. But here's the deal. The show claims that in the 1300s, the Ming Dynasty overthrew the mighty Quan Dynasty. I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of this stuff. Founded by Genghis Khan. Ever heard of him? They built many of China's lasting landmarks, including the Great Wall. Over their 300-year reign, they also raised a powerful navy and a 1 million-man army. The Ming army ranged from 1.2 to 3 million men, according to the show.
We got 300 guys.
And their dynasty covered 12 times that of France. When a Ming warrior kills an enemy soldier, they collect their ear. More ears equals more prestige. So we already covered the ear thing. I want to get into history. The dates given for the Ming warrior correspond to the reign of the Ming dynasty, and much of what Deadliest Warrior says is actually true. The Ming dynasty did overthrow the Quan dynasty, which was the Mongol dynasty installed by Genghis Khan. And it was a large empire with an estimated population between 100 to 200 million people in it, which is actually kind of wild because like modern America is like between 300 and 400 million. The first emperor, known as the Hongwu Emperor, organized the population in such a way that allowed him to field a large army. Historians do support that the Ming army exceeded 1 million soldiers. And the Hongwu Emperor also focused a lot of funding on building harbors and a powerful navy. His successor was his grandson, the Jianwen Emperor. However, he reigned for only 4 years before being deposed by his uncle and replaced by Hongwu's not his name, but the Hongwu Emperor's 4th son, who's known as the Yongli Emperor. The Yongli Emperor ruled for 22 years, and in that time, he is most known for downsizing the Ming Navy in order to fund national construction projects, most notably connecting a bunch of fortresses in order to make the Great Wall. He also waged many wars against the Mongols, crushing the remnants of the Yuan dynasty, and conquered Vietnam. Eventually, this standing army would decrease as Ming society changed, and by 1570, the Ming army would be mostly comprised of mercenaries. I already went into the ear collecting bit, so all I have left to say is I could go on, but the Ming dynasty is so full of like rich history that it could warrant like its own podcast. But this covers everything that the show talks about. So.
You said the army was like 1.5 million.
historians say it was over 1 million. They claim in the show it's like 1.2 to 3 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then why, whenever they do a little excerpt where they show them defending the wall of China, is it 4 people?
Four people running the wall.
4 people. They're like, they took on charging armies. There's like 4 guys running in a field.
That numbers thing is very important, I think, to some of the gear that's presented in this episode and why maybe they do the outcome that they do. This idea that the Musketeers are like a specialized, smaller group that's very wealthy, whereas the Ming are a huge army, and so they are outfitted.
4 guys.
4 guys, and so they were outfitted with gear that was simple, cheap, like because when you have like 1 million guys charge into somewhere, not everybody needs to be armed with the best thing. Like you're just going to overrun people. So I think that is an important factor to consider when we talk about some of the weapons going forward here.
I think we're ready to roll into them.
Yep.
Yeah. Without further ado. So starting off with, I'm going to say long range. They kind of gave up on classifying this stuff. So this is probably long range.
I think they do call it long range.
Yeah. So the Nest of Bees. So stats for Nest of Bees. Range of 600 yards. Weight 6.5 pounds. A 32 arrow battery, and made of wood, paper, bamboo, and gunpowder. So, anything you found interesting on the Nest of Bees?
You caught me with some Three Musketeers.
Yeah, I'll take the mic for a second. When they intro the Nest of Bees, Jonathan is standing there with like a bow in the background too, like off on the side. He's like, they are introing this, and he's like, "Oh, we're not using this."
He didn't get the memo. Yeah. My personal collection.
But he brought his own bow out to like shoot in the field. Take it, Matt.
So the Nest of, thank you. The Nest of Bees does in fact exist. And there's plenty of evidence to say that, so the Chinese translation translates to fire arrows, but it specifically says it's not to be confused with like an arrow that you just like set on fire. It's referring to an arrow with like a gunpowder patch attached to it. And eventually this, like the Chinese term eventually translated to rocket or rockets. That's why they call it the rocket battery and stuff like that. There's drawings, there's writings of it. So the concept of a fire arrow refers to attaching a gunpowder charge on an arrow, allowing it to travel faster and farther than a traditional one. The term for these weapons overlaps with the Chinese word for rocket. The first and most simple form of this weapon came using a traditional bow with a single arrow, which is why that guy might have had his bow.
Maybe it was for like a demonstration off camera or something.
Yeah.
Maybe like contrast at some point.
Well,
Here's a
speed,
normal bow and
too.
arrow.
So
Yeah.
They do the big thing with the speed of like how fast the rocket goes.
eventually many factions in East Asia would create various forms of rocket batteries. Some would be stationary turrets, or they would be mounted on wheels similar in size to like a ballista that we've seen in before. Some would be personally carried rocket packs like the Nest of Bees, which gets its name from its hexagonal shape like a honeycomb. So the idea of these batteries is to utilize all the advantages of a rocket arrow, which is the range and the velocity, while compensating for its disadvantage, which is a lack of accuracy. You know, these are not as accurate as a traditional arrow because they're kind of flying all over, and you can see it in the show. So the idea was, if there's a crowd of guys and you can fire like 100 arrows into them, or if you're one guy carrying this pack and one guy's running up to you, you can light it and just kill you. You're going to kill that guy. So it's like a shotgun almost of arrows. So it did exist. There is a lot to suggest they were the first ever rocket used in warfare, which the show does claim. Jonathan says the range is 100 to 500 yards, but we have no idea really of knowing that fact.
Don't they give it a range and like the stats is 600 yards? Did
Oh yeah,
anybody
it's
else-
like stupid.
yeah, it's like absurd.
That's what I was saying. They give it 600
That's
yards.
like the Remington.
yeah,
And then,
yeah.
and then Jonathan says 100 to 500, which was really funny.
Yeah, I have been on a shooting range at like, Matt, you have too, at like 500,
Oh, yeah.
600. It's not hitting shit.
No,
Not that far.
That
That is really far.
600 is like a decent shot for a rifle. Like
Yeah.
you
Like
have
a
to have,
scoped rifle.
You have to have
Yeah.
like the right doping and stuff because like bullet starts to drop and stuff like that. So
Yeah, all those guys are out there with their like snipers. Like you walk, check this out.
nest of bees.
Yeah.
right.
Oh my god, he hit every target.
Yeah.
And it is funny. You know, I guess I'll save this for when we get to the edge and let you guys get into the test here.
Okay, so starting out with the test, they launch a single arrow out of a pipe to test the velocity. So what's weird too is they have like, I imagine to help tell how fast it's going, they have like the weird like block grid system. I'm wondering why they couldn't use a chronometer. Like, is testing the velocity different than like the speed? Brendan, science expert.
It's the same.
Yeah, so why wouldn't they just use the chronometer?
They forgot it back at the studio.
We gotta
They're
make this real
shit, we
quick."
got to make it up on the spot.
Maybe visually it's more pleasing just to see it slowly go over the black and white stripes towards the target.
Yeah, that's like some Mythbusters.
yeah,
shit.
Mythbusters used to do that a lot.
Yeah. So it goes flying and it bounces into a field half a mile away. I will say too, they're doing this test again in like the Windows XP background, where it's like it's so weirdly picturesque out there. That single arrow goes 227 miles per hour. Then Jeff says, "Let's do a full test on the nest." So they do a full test on the nest with the entire nest of bees with a primary target on horseback in the center. And Jeff is like so excited. Like this is sort of Jeff's episode. Like he's really into it.
I will say they give an arrow count of 32 arrows, and that is accurate to the like design.
You paused it and counted it.
No, they give it like, you know, they don't say magazine size, but they say like 32 arrows, I think. And I would have it written down. Yeah, 32 arrow battery, which is correct. When I read that, I was like, hey, they got it right.
I like in the slow-mo, the one like dud that like it spins around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very cool demonstration. And it misses the primary target, but hits dead center on 6 targets, which is kind of cool that like Armand is really surprised. He's like, it totally missed all these other people, but it's like complete exactly where you want it on all those other targets. So pretty interesting. So any thoughts on this test?
I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it was visually exciting.
It's not a bad weapon either, because like I'm sure they struggle with having unique weapons.
Yeah.
And I think that this was something that they had, like no other warrior is going to have this. So
And I think they use this because the Ming throughout their time had access to flintlocks, muskets,
Should have used them.
cannons.
They would've won this battle.
right. Cannons, artillery, cannons, artillery, and bombs. And I think they just pick this because it is a unique weapon.
Oh yeah,
for
it's
the
definitely
show.
something cool.
Yeah.
we have this is like different than anything we've seen.
Yeah.
It's like
So
a handheld like artillery piece almost.
if you're angry about the Ming losing and it's because of this, like you're totally right. They could have wheeled out anything that the French have also at this time. But like with the time periods given, I mean, but for the purposes of the show, they're just trying to be entertaining, and it is really fun. It's really fun to just watch them.
yes.
yeah.
And it's impressive that it hits anything. And when it does hit, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. They actually hit something with that.
When they do that, like you can picture though, like 50 guys with these things, and there's a charging army of like thousands of guys, and this like wave of arrows shoots out and like drops half the guys charging. Like you're like, you could see like what the practical use of this is.
And I can see people being mad that like, oh, well, this is supposed to be with like 1 million people. But
Yeah.
I think having it on the show with only 5 like Ming like that is worth more than like accuracy of like, oh, 5 lone Ming would never use this, you know?
Yeah.
And they have it like a fucking another bow.
Well, a Best of Bees is a personal rocket battery. It's something that, you know, instead of giving these guys the Alexander the Great treatment where they give them a ballista to handicap them so they'll definitely lose, like this is something that one person could carry around. And like if you're coming across a group of enemies, you can light that shit, let it fly, and then just toss it and pull out your sword. So
Yeah.
right.
This definitely is like a group, like attacking a group of people.
Yeah.
And you can see on the front of it where it's like there's like an angle that they come out, so they spread out. I mean, if you wanted to hit like one person with it, you could make all straight tubes, and they would go mostly straight.
Yeah,
and you could kill one person.
You want it
like
to
all
spread
30
out.
of those would be in one dummy.
Yeah, you want it to spread out.
Yeah. We then get a segment moving on to the Musketeers about how much the Musketeers bang. And
Yeah.
I think it's Luke. He says, dude, he says, you have no idea the reputation the Musketeers have for pulling in the ladies and being badasses.
If you think rock stars,
Well, I was gonna say, and then it cuts to a dude in a feather hat and a doily around his neck.
I wrote like the timestamp starting at 10:32. There's an entire segment dedicated to women being horny for the Musketeers. And they even have like, they never have women stunt actors on this show, but we see one in this where, and her whole purpose is just to like be looking at the Musketeer guys like, oh,
dang.
look at the feather in his cap.
they got feathers in their hats. And if you think rock stars get a lot of women, the Musketeers pulled some major tail. They were badasses carrying 4 feet of steel, just waiting to prove how manly they are.
I'm surprised they didn't make a dick joke there. Say 4 feet of steel. And I'm not talking about the rapier.
Yeah,
There's a little.
well, I have to say we always keep track of number of gay jokes and number of dick size jokes
And homophobia.
Well, that's what I was saying with homophobic jokes. And this one, can we give it the green check mark up in the corner, Craig? This one passes.
What about the over masculine?
Well, listen, it's not everything's perfect, but we keep track of those two things, and this episode passed. I'm very happy. So the
Not
only
really racist either, except
at the end,
There's
but-
a cherry on the top.
yeah, we'll get to that. But last thing I wanted to say before we get to the flintlock
Well, I want to touch on this part real quick one more time.
Okay, I just
beat
have
a dead horse.
I have two funny things to say. So.
Well, let me say something not funny. In just under 2 centuries, in that little bit where they talk about the dueling, they say 40,000 French nobles were lost in private duels. Louis, get control over your goddamn men. That's a lot of stupid deaths. Who was at the forefront of these private duels? Of course, the Musketeers winning.
Yeah.
Well,
Aaron Burr.
to be fair, back then, like, you couldn't watch Netflix. You couldn't, like, fucking play video games. You couldn't smoke weed. You just shovel dirt. So, like, what is there to live for?
I like how they brag about like 40,000 people were lost in private duels. It's like, all right, well, I'd stop killing each other.
I think what you mean to say, Craig, is we didn't have like Elden Ring and Halo and stuff to really settle our disputes like true men.
That was the original Meet Me on Rust.
You know what I'm saying? He's like, you will not meet me on Rust.
Meet Me on Rust with the intervention.
Intervention ACOG only. Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny notes I had was at 10:05 we get the classic warrior insert sound effect. It might be the same one you're talking about where it's like
that deadliest warrior.
A guy dying, he's like, oh.
There's 2 sound effects they use. There is the ah and there's the oh.
We get that multiple times this episode, and we also get a line from Philip where it's either Luke or I can't pronounce it, so I'm just going to say Xavier. Xavier. One of them says that they're not impressed by the nested bees, and Philip goes, doesn't impress you until you get one stuck in your face.
Very aggressively.
Yeah.
They do a point right here too where the Ming Warrior experts come out and they talk about these poison grenades the Ming Warriors would use, and they never address it again in the entire show. They're like, we had these poison grenades and we'd throw it, and there's like a shot of like a guy puking and shit.
Yeah.
They never addressed it again.
Yeah, I remember them talking about that, and it's like they decided to go with the mechanical landmine instead.
Oh.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
Oh,
we'll get to it.
Where am I? I lost my notes. Shit.
We're on the musket test.
I got you. So moving on to the flintlock musket, range of 100 yards, weight of 8 pounds. Ammo, is that 75 caliber? Is that how you put that?
Yep.
Wall?
yeah.
Wood and steel. Luke is explaining the ammo type, and Jeff goes, 75 caliber? That's the largest we've seen on this show yet. And I put in the emoji. So anything interesting on the flintlock, guys?
Yeah, I want to take this for a moment. So I scoured
We got one, of course, right here, a modern flintlock.
the exact one on the show. We got it. So I scoured far and wide on the internet to find out what musket was given to the guard in 1622. It was pretty hard to find any record of muskets made by France before 1700. So I had to go and reference the Deadliest Warrior wiki.
Sorry, I'm making as much noise as possible here, getting my last Three Musketeer guy out.
So I referenced the Deadliest Warrior wiki, which they bring up 2 muskets. The first is the Brown Bess musket, which is British and is the only one they mention on the Deadliest Warrior wiki, chambered in .75 caliber.
I think it comes up in the George Washington episode.
And that's what it's from. And then the second is the Charleville musket, which is the only French musket they mention on the show, made in 1717, so slightly past our time period, which is what Napoleon would use. So I was like, what are they using on this show?
Yeah, that's one thing real quick I'll say is all the weapons are very generic for the most part, because you have the pole gun, you have the grenade, like you have the mechanical landmine, and I don't envy you guys having to search.
Yeah, I had to do some deep dives. So what I did at that point, I took a closer look at the one they present on the show, and it actually has a very distinct trigger guard, and which, believe it or not, I actually used some of my own knowledge to find out what this was. So what they use on the show is the British. It's actually not a flintlock. It's a matchlock musket. You can find them online if you look up English Civil War matchlock muskets. They have a distinct fishtail stock, .75 caliber ball, and were created in the early 17th century, was fits our time period. They were found all over Europe, including France, according to the information I could find. But this is my moment. I'm going to give praise to the show for once. Instead of just choosing like a French-made musket or just anything they could get their hands on, someone might have actually done a little bit of research, because it took me a good 20 minutes or so to find out what they were actually using, and they found a good rifle to actually showcase for this episode.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anything you found, Scott?
No, that's about it. He covered it up pretty well.
You told Lucas everything about the musket?
Yeah, he learned everything he knows from me.
I'm glad that you actually tracked that down, because I know you were fussing about it, like trying to find the...
Yeah. Well, I do this thing where, like, here's what they present on the Deadliest Warrior wiki all the time, and but I want to know what, like, they actually use on the show a lot as their analog. Mm-hmm. And so they actually, like, nailed it this time, which I was surprised with.
Cool. Shouts out. So Jeff, whenever they test the musket, Jeff measures the velocity at 426 miles per hour, which is almost double the nest of bees. And then they use a ballistic gel torso, thank God. And Luke takes about 15 to 20 seconds to reload his musket. Dorian observes the damage after the test is done, the ballistic gel. And he says the first chest shot would have been a kill. The second chest shot would have been an eventual kill. And the headshot may have been a kill. And we see in the high speed, the round actually bounces off the skull. Philip points out that the 3 shots took a minute to execute. And, like, Philip is so aggressive during these segments, it makes you wonder if he has a record.
Well, they don't ever, they do this like, oh, the reload speed on like any of that stuff. Yeah. What's the reload speed on the nest of bees?
Right, none. It's one shot.
Yeah. It probably takes like 30 minutes to wrap all those arrows.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I have quite a bit of experience with firing flintlocks, and I've been hunting with flintlocks, so I've been at the range reloading them. Yeah. So I'm speaking from like some like amateur experience here. I feel like that time of 3 shots in a minute is completely made up, because that is a really impressive time. It takes a while to reload a musket. Now, someone like a French musketeer might be really practiced in it and is probably going to be able to do it faster than I can. But I was just impressed with Luke's accuracy.
Yeah,
and we get to see him. We get to see him actually shoot. Muskets are not flintlock muskets. This is before rifling. That thing is coming out of that barrel, and it's like a little ball, and it's bouncing around. They're not super accurate, and I was impressed with his accuracy. And I thought, if that's his actual reload speed, like if he actually did get 3 shots in a minute, that's actually really good.
It's probably made up. There was no timer running. He was just, they were just like, talking and then like slowly reloading.
I feel like he was casually reloading it.
Yeah.
Like,
or he's just a gun nerd and just practices loading muskets.
Exactly.
I'm sure you could go on YouTube, type in speed reloading
compilation number 5.
Yeah, I'm sure there are guys that can reload it that fast, and especially back then, if that was your primary arm as a soldier, like you probably did, because your life's on the line. Like you probably did reload that bad boy pretty quick. But I was just pointing out like 3 shots in a minute. I was like, that's freaking impressive. Like,
Did anybody have a problem with? I kind of did the fact that he gets that little like bipod or single like stand that he gets to fire it off.
yeah.
Like if you're a big army and doing the traditional like volley fire columns, I could see that, but like on a 5-on-5 fight, I feel like that's not a viable.
It was
Did they do that for the musket? Did they give him?
Yeah, he when he fires it off the test, he's got it on this like
a rest.
like pole.
Oh, they do it for the
3-barrel.
Yeah, the pole.
Yeah, they both get that then.
Yep.
Which both of them seem kind of like.
Here's a little Easter egg for you, sort of. It sounds like Jeff is having some audio problems this episode. If you listen, this is the start of it. His audio sounds like someone really had to like take some background audio and enhance it.
Even though it was limited and compared to the nest of bees, the musket does have quite a long range. And it does the damage when it hits. I'm giving my edge to the musket.
And it happens
No,
throughout this
dude,
whole
that
episode.
happens in other episodes. I never said it because I wondered if it was like my version on Amazon Prime, but like a lot of people's audio sounds really weird, especially Jeff.
Jeff is like, his audio is off this whole episode. Like, not like his voice, but you can hear like graininess to it. Like they had to like take it and boost it way up or something.
So they had to do a lot of shit, I imagine.
Hey, but they did finally use, like you said, the ballistics dummy for ballistics. So those might have been. I always questioned their ability or their behind the scenes, like how much black powder do we put in this rifle?
Yes.
Whether they underload it to get that like bing,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get into wheel lock versus 3-arm pole, because I have a lot to say there. But for this, I don't know. It hits the target. It kills the guy. I will note, so I'm going to bring this up. This is another episode where the armor only gets tested one freaking time, and it's never brought up on any other tests. And then at the end of the show, Max is like, yeah, it was probably the most pivotal role. It's the armor. And it's like, well, I'm glad we wasted all our time looking at high-speed footage of the nest of bees, and we got one shot on the steel cuirass, you know. And then Max is like, yeah, the Ming shouldn't have even fucking showed up because, you know, the Musketeers got the steel cuirass.
Yeah.
Sounds like a sore loser over there.
And another almost Easter egg, they talk about the bayonet for less than 10 seconds in a weird segment. Like obligation.
Invented in France, the bayonet was first used by the Musketeers for close quarters combat and accounted for 1/3 of all casualties on the battlefield. Allez! Oh, yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Dude, I wrote that. The funny shot where he's like, allez. Stabs it.
Where, you know, shocker, the bayonet goes right through the dummy.
Yeah.
I was like, that is.
Why'd they even fucking put that in?
Well, that's the thing.
Like,
Like
it was responsible for 1/3 of all deaths on the battlefield.
Well, they put it in there because, like, in a battle, you a lot of times in that era, you had like volley fire going on, but when ranks broke, like people would they would train to look for when like the enemy was slow, they had like a gap in their fire, because if you noticed that the enemy column wasn't like reloading fast enough or enough of them had dropped, you didn't bother firing on them. You just charged in with like swords and bayonets. And so the bayonet was really relevant to that era of warfare.
Oh, I know. You didn't notice, but this is a Gettysburg
Yes.
shirt.
Yep.
I'm well versed in musket warfare.
Pickett's Charge. Ever heard of it? Yeah. I don't know. It's okay that they cover it because it's important, but you know, it's a little BS.
But does it
that they get an extra weapon?
Does it count towards the musket's final kills?
That's a good question.
I would assume so. Just boiling off the fact, we'll get to it, they use it in the sim.
Yeah, it is weird though that they
reenactment.
kind of just put it in there, and then you get like, it's like one of us is like at the range with the bayonet, that shot where he's like, allez, and he just stabs it.
I imagine if you
it's just
had
a guy having
musket,
fun with it.
if you were issued a musket though, I imagine you would be issued the bayonet, and probably would have it on your musket if you were going into battle.
Definitely.
How much training do you need for a fucking bayonet?
We actually,
You're right.
they actually do like bayonet training courses, and exactly what you would think it would be. It's like running up and just stabbing like a thing.
Yeah. So
you can't hesitate when you're in the shit, Craig.
That's true. Get into the Edge. Dorian Edge's musket. Dorian disagrees with the Edge, and
Spoiler.
Max says if an entire army had an SFBs, it would be a different story. Any thoughts on the Edge?
I'll just go real quick. I agree with the Edge. I think I would rather have a musket, especially the fact that they include the bayonet with it. I think is a big part of, why I would choose it. The Nest of Bees is inaccurate. It's made for mass army on mass army. It would be impossible to reload in the heat of battle. And
it feels like it really feels like you could just go prone, like lay down in the grass, and you could dodge the whole Nest of Bees, which is something that would be possible in a small scale fight like this. That was just to your point about the accuracy.
Yeah, I just think if they were both in front of me, I would choose the musket. So I agree with the Edge.
Mm-hmm. I will agree with the Edge too. I think the musket's bringing a superior accuracy and damage. Like
his shots were pretty good.
If you get hit with that musket like in your chest, I mean it's this huge lead ball. That's ripping right through you.
75 caliber. It's the biggest we've seen on the show so far.
Right. Where, if a nest of bee arrows hits you, especially if like you're wearing armor, like it's not a guaranteed instant kill, unless it's hitting you really in a vital spot. Like I brought up before, the only unfair part about this is that the Ming could have brought something. They had
similar.
They had muskets. They had bigger batteries of these Nest of Bees, but they chose it to make it unique and for entertainment value. So I'm not really mad about it. I think it was cool, and because of the show, I know what the Nest of Bees is.
I would love to see a musket versus musket episode where the dumb rationale where they used to give one the edge.
You're talking about George Washington versus...
Oh, geez. Stay tuned for that episode coming up.
Versus the Corsican pimp himself, Napoleon.
Sure.
I went real back and forth with the Edge. Like, I remember...
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion.
I mean, when I first watched this, I was like strong. Like, I think the Nest of Bees should get it because... It's cooler.
It's cooler.
It is cool. I mean, it is cooler. But like, if it fired 5 arrows, okay, I'll take the more accurate musket, even though it's got the big reload time. But like, it fires 32 shots, like
out of 5-man squad.
At a 5-man squad, like. I
really want to see what that would do. They probably couldn't test it.
Yeah, but the Musketeers are hiding behind trees in the sim.
Well, I would be curious what it would do against armor, like a breastplate, because those arrows are going really fucking. Brendan, what the hell is that?
That's why we can have nice things.
Yo, the Brandon cam's down.
The Brendan cam is down.
I have some serious.
So we're good.
I have some serious questions about the reliability of some of these.
I was
things
thinking that
like
too.
the Nest of Bees. Is that seriously like? It's going to go off 100% of the time.
If it gets wet, like at
if it just explodes in your like a fire, like a bad firework.
They don't even address what is actually propelling it, do they? Is it?
They talk. It's like black powder.
There's like little
canister.
There's a little canister of black powder attached to each arrow that's like firing off. It's like a Roman candle.
Yeah,
I think he says it like that in the show.
They love to shit on like the black powder, which I'm going to.
Sorry, not Roman candle, bottle rockets.
Yeah. Which we'll get into with the pistol, especially. They like to shit on the like unreliability that they do with black powder constantly, but then sometimes they just blatantly ignore it with some weapons.
I was thinking about it. In the end, I came around. The musket probably should get the Edge. It's got the better armor penetration. It's probably more accurate, but I don't think it's as far away as the show may make it out to be. I mean, it's 32 shots to 1.
Hey, Scott, what team you on?
I'm on Team Musketeer. I'm going to be a free agent at the end of this episode.
We got
maybe the Mings.
We got the 2 Musketeers over here.
So going on to X Factor, we get a little break from weapons. Go into X Factor.
Love it.
I'll say it real quick, then we can argue about it. So the show says the Ming's X Factor is that they were agile in Kung Fu and Wu Dang. And there's no mention of that ever in the rest of the episode.
You pronounced it wrong. It's woo dang.
We get some nice reused B-roll from the Shaolin episode.
Yes.
Really?
Part,
I didn't notice
they
that.
reuse Shaolin monk footage. And I talked about like wushu and its origins in that episode. So because it doesn't come up at all for the rest of this, I don't think it's that relevant. So I'm not really going to get into it. Like you can look up wushu and kung fu. There's a whole martial arts about it. It's like China's national martial art. And if you watch the Shaolin Monk episode, I go into its origins.
Check the timestamps.
It's a lot more relevant in that episode. So
yeah. And then the Musketeers' X Factor is their nobility.
So essentially, inbreeding is their X Factor. We can move on.
Do you know who my dad is on the battlefield?
I will say,
when you feel superior to your enemy, that's lethal. What did you say on the Nazi one?
Oh God! When you think your enemy is a dog, you'll not hesitate.
How is that a brag?
I will say,
I get it, but
when they're going through this, it's like I had a timestamp at 1720. Watch the Ming who leads the charge into battle. You have to watch it to appreciate it. So his acting is just so bad. Like he awkwardly runs in and he's like leading the charge of the camp, but he's too far ahead of the other guys. So you watch him, he turns right. He like awkwardly makes a loop. There's a guy he's already killed. And he walks up and he takes his pole gun and he starts hitting the ground next to his head. Like it's not even like they shot it from the side so it looks like it. They're shooting it from the front so you can see him just hitting the ground next to his head. It's a really funny shot. So 1720, check that out. If Craig edits it in or if you're just watching at home.
Yeah, we'll do. So thank God we're past that and we're on to explosives. So starting with the mechanical landmine. I put landline.
Mine auto-corrected to that too in my notes.
Stats are multiple detonations, weight of 10 pounds, made of wood, porcelain, and gunpowder, and they call it an underground network of bombs topped with a weapons treasure trove to attract enemies. And any info, Matt, you have on the mechanical?
I want a 1 second thing. Did this show invent the term mechanical landmine?
Yes,
okay.
it did. Yeah.
I have a big grievance when you're done.
Okay. So something like the mechanical landmine could have existed. I did not find anything that specifically referred to a mechanism like this that was triggered by like an enemy grabbing a weapon. I didn't see anything about like, oh, the Ming would plant, pole arms and like someone would pull it up and get blown up. There are a lot of drawings and descriptions, though, of different kinds of mines that were used during the Ming era and before that. And this did include some that were multi-charge, and they would be set up in pots and like buried in the ground. The most common one I found, the one that was the most similar to this that I found was a trip mine, actually, where they would set up like pots kind of in a U shape and there would be a trip trigger in the middle. So when you walked, like you hit this and boom, 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 like it would blow up all around you. I didn't see anything quite like what they described. It seems like it might have been a little bit of an invention of the show. And when they test it, like they do the non-explosion test where they test the little contraption that they made and they watch like the gunpowder go like, whoo. But then when they do the actual explosives test, it's clearly faked. Like they stuff like actual explosives into the mound and you don't see that contraption, probably because the guy that built it, like, don't blow that up. I like that thing.
I look good in my garden.
Yeah, I worked really hard on that. I want to know if that prop is out there somewhere. It's in somebody's house.
Is it on the prop for sale site that I found the Cynthian axe on?
The mechanical landmine. And, they just pack an absurd amount of explosive into both the mechanical landmine test and the grenade test, which I guess we'll get to when we cover that. But so it could have existed, but I didn't see anything that was called the mechanical landmine that worked exactly like this demonstrates.
Yeah. All I have for the notes on the test is that Jeff gives a countdown in what I assume is Mandarin. And then they blow everything up. That's all the only notes I had. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to say about that test?
Grievance Relievance 1. This entire weapon. I didn't even look it up. I did not type it into Google. I just assumed that they made up this term mechanical landmine, just looking at it itself. So I'm glad that Like, I was like, oh, Matt's gonna like prove me wrong, and he's gonna be like, this is actually, a crazy thing.
It's funny. Every other Ming weapon on here was real, and I found like the actual name and example and drawings of it, except for this one. This was the only one I couldn't find.
I was looking at this, and I was like, there's no way this fucking thing would work. There's no way they say a fuse is lit on it, and it stays lit, buried underground, and these channels of black powder go off perfectly. That would be the most inconsistent thing I have ever seen. And someone's just supposed to happen along. Oh, free weapon.
So
because I think you're forgetting the most inconsistent thing you've ever seen is our camera.
Yeah. Is it blinking again?
I will say, before we get to the grenade test, obviously I think this test was faked, but it is pretty damn entertaining to watch. I have to admit, when it just explodes and like just destroys these mannequins, and everybody's going insane, and they're like, yeah.
Look up how black powder burns. It's not that.
It was really funny to watch. Jeff clearly has like a charge under the table, and it's just like hits it.
But they just present this thing, and they're so excited about it. It's there's like two pots, and like one lid comes off the other, and this one has a burning fuse. How long does that fuse burn when you put it underground? Does it just stay burning forever?
How did they make this test if no one was there to pull the weapon?
Right.
So I didn't pay attention. Like,
here's what I have to say about it. As with other mines on this show, I question how something like this would be used. If the simulation is real, and if not, if you don't believe it's real, just picture this scenario, like 5-on-5. Like, does one side get a setup time where they can like lay mines down on a flank or something? Mines and traps just kind of send you into a tailspin on the show, because it's like, when do they have time to do this stuff? And this one especially would take a really long time to set up, and I really question, for the purposes of a 5-on-5, is a musketeer in the sim, like, are they programmed that they're gonna pick up?
That's what I was like. Look at this weapon.
They talk about that in the aftermath.
Do they?
Oh, you watched the aftermath?
I actually bought it the other 2 days ago.
The first person I
kind
ever spoke to bought the aftermath.
I'm curious to hear that. I always assume when they have a trap style weapon, like when these guys
it's just
spawn,
preset.
When these guys spawn into the map, they get one preset like trap. Already set up most of the time.
Brendan, are you looking up Elden Ring footage?
No.
I saw you looking stuff up. I was like, he's probably looking at Elden Ring stuff.
But on the aftermath, someone asked a question like, the Musketeers are these specialty elite units that are trained with like rapiers. They're not just gonna pick up like a pole arm or some sword.
In a 5-on-5 conflict, like that trap setup comes off as an army thing. Like you and the army are venturing along because logistics worked different back then. Not everything was super uniform. So if you're a mercenary band and the Ming lay these traps, and you're like, hey, look at these steel-edged weapons, this must be an abandoned like camp, and you grab one and it blows up. Like, how long has that been sitting there?
That fuse is burning the whole time underground, because you're playing Skyrim and you have 34 swords on your back, and you're like, ooh, that one looks nice.
Press A to loot.
And that concept just doesn't work for a 5-on-5. Like, especially if it's in a computer program. Like, I'm interested to see what end around they have for that question, because like, you picture like musketeers are charging this hill and they're firing their guns and they're getting ready to close in with swords. Like, are they gonna stop and be like,
in the reenactment they do?
Like,
we'll see.
It's the most like forced scene. It's like really, it's really kind of funny. I'm not triggered by this episode at all.
The weapon
to me, it was very.
Oh, it triggers me too.
It was very obvious to me, like, that this is just sort of, we got to give something the edge and explosive, so we're gonna just give it to the bigger one, the one that we say
the one note I wrote when they were doing just the like fuse test, not the whole one, just to see how the black powder lit. The first thing that came to my mind was like Pee Wee Herman's breakfast machine, because like he has to light this fuse that goes down to this black powder that travels through 2 ramped bamboo shoots that then goes out to all the black powder. I'm just like, they talk about the nest of bees, all the stuff that could go wrong with the nest of bees, like if it misfired, like
double that.
What could go wrong with this thing? Like, and it's built into like this 3-foot high dirt is just all surrounded by. At some point, like you're like, wait a minute, there's something wrong, fishy here.
Like a Tom and Jerry.
Or like a fucking pig will come along and like get in there and like
blood detonate it, or
but the musket,
it rains and the powder gets.
But the musket will jam. You know, it won't go off. It won't get enough spark.
Yeah,
I definitely agree. They are. If you're invested in like this warrior matchup, there is things to get pissed about, I guess.
And
That's it right there.
Going back real quick, so Max's response to that question is he's like, well, it didn't need to always be a string attached to a weapon that could trigger. They could be like jugs of water or just a guy like tied with a string that went off and he could see them and pull it and that would trigger it. And I'm like, okay, that's a little better, but at the same time, like 5-on-5, it still isn't.
I'd rather just pick up the jug of water and hit someone with it.
Well, you know,
let's move to the
let's get into the grenade test.
Yeah. So the grenade, just the grenade, stats are single detonation, 2 pounds, made of cast iron, gunpowder, and shrapnel. Xavier says, imagine 100 musketeers all throwing grenades. And yeah, okay, but it's 5v5. Imagine 1 million Ming warriors firing this. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the grenade, but I also just want to, please don't get into the test because I have a lot to say about the test.
Okay.
Sure.
So
yeah,
because there's a lot to analyze. Scott, do you want to talk about the grenade?
Max was probably just juiced when they found out that they got a grenade because he's like, sweet, I'm just going to copy paste pirate and have an early day out of work. Like, it's literally
the pirate Granado.
Yeah, there's not much more different, I don't think. I mean, I found some stuff that like military units back then used them, like grenadier units. They were a thing. Like cast iron filled with black powder. And
all my notes are on the test.
The one thing I wrote on my notes that was funny was when Xavier does the throw from over the fence. For some reason, he does this like double air hump.
Whoa, wait. So
I'll let you get into it. That made me laugh. I cede the rest of my time, whatever that word is.
I'll take my little 3 seconds here. So I did my usual research. Did they actually, was this a real thing? I like to double check that they actually used during a Portsmouth dredge project, an archaeological dig site in France.
French is like, it's one of those
French t-shirt.
It's one of those new Heinz flavors, like the mayo chup and the cranch. Like, it's French. It's like French mustard and ranch mixing up.
So during the Portsmouth dredge project, an archaeological dig site in France.
Man, I can't eat any of my fries without my French sauce.
My French fries.
Among a bunch of cannonballs, they also pulled out a hand grenade dating back to at least Napoleon's era was found. It was made of cast iron and its fuse was still intact. This dated it back to 1799, which is slightly ahead of our time period, but that leads me to believe that these could have been around for.
Well, it's around for the pirate, and I think the pirate's time period is listed like before this, I think, if I'm correct. I think it's on the show.
There we go. No, they used the golden age of piracy, which is like 17 up till 1725.
Yeah, isn't the pirate like listed before these years though?
I think this is like 1640 to
but it's 1776.
We'll rise again.
The golden age of piracy ended in like 1725, if my memory. So we're looking at 1622 though when these guys formed.
The chronological date for the pirate is listed as the year 1715.
Yeah,
so that is like smack in the middle of this.
Yeah, so just they found evidence of them in French.
Okay, so on to this test, my favorite test of the entire episode, and if you don't pay attention you'll miss a lot of this. So Jeff calls him Xavier, not Xavier. So Xavier lightly tosses a grenade in a cart and then pushes his hands in the air in celebration. Then Jeff says,
Xavier, get in here, man. We're on. Get suited.
And I assume that's Jeff having to yell at him because he's not pretending to be urgent enough. And it wasn't clear enough that all these explosive tests are faked.
Yeah.
Xavier has enough time to casually toss a grenade, walk through the blast radius, and then get suited up behind the protective barrier before the fuse goes off. And Yeah, so a dummy is obliterated by the grenade, and the blast seems about 10 times as deadly as the granada.
Yeah. He like, yeah, it does. It's like way bigger than the granada explosion.
It does not explode like black powder whatsoever.
No, it like this thing detonates. It looks identical to like the mechanical landmine explosion, except that this is just one explosive that they packed in. And yeah, it's so clearly fake because he walks like in the middle of the fucking test zone.
And then just
yeah, and then Jeff's like, all right, he's back. All right, is that little prop thing in the wagon?
imagine like he lit an actual fuse that was about to explode, and he goes. Just walks right through it. Like
they throw it into like this wagon thing that's supposed to represent these Ming Warriors with their attack wagon, whatever that is.
Looks like it's filled with solo cups.
I have a strange suspicion one of those things had an explosive hidden in it.
Yeah, it's like Maxime Franz throwing the RGD5 in the washing machine, and Sonny Buzik is lighting the cigarette as he's walking away. It's like, Sonny, get out of there.
yeah.
One of those dummies also gets blown to just bits too. Like he's got holes here,
Eviscerated.
Yeah, it's just like gone.
Yeah, so we get
It's
the
like more
edge.
effective than a modern grenade.
Yeah.
Because it's just a fake charge.
The edge goes to the mechanical landmine. Any thoughts on the edge?
Grievance, relievance. Are you kidding me? They give the edge to some weird pots of black powder buried under the ground over a grenade, which you can carry multiple of. Just because the explosion, they mention it. The French explosion. They throw it in the cart and the explosion. They do this like little shockwave diagram where they're like, oh, the explosion only went this direction and killed these two guys, but the two guys behind the cart are fine. But this pot thing is, I've already like harped on the mechanical landmine enough, but it's stupid. Would you rather rely on some guy trying to pick up a weapon or pick up some stuff, or just light something and throw it?
Here's what I will say to you, my friend.
You know, today's special forces are dumb.
Yeah.
Why do they even carry grenades? Just use black powder pots.
I will
set up.
I will say
prearranged.
this. I hope this eases your mind. The only reason the mechanical landmine gets the edge is because, yeah, they have to make the edges even. And also, anytime they test explosives on here, you guys might have noticed this. They always just give it to the bigger boom.
Yeah.
Like, I think they do that in Nail Bomb versus PMN. They do it the Palm Z in F1 against the Bouncing Betty. And later this season, we're going to see like Navy SEAL versus Israeli Commando, where they do Semtex versus C4, which is like the same fucking thing. But because the Semtex is a bigger blast, they're like edge, you know.
Supposedly.
Yeah. And so that's probably the reason this gets the edge, is because they can say, well, this is a bigger boom and we need the edges to be even on this show. So
It's just one of those like, are you kidding me?
sure. I agree with you that based on what's presented, I think the grenade, what's presented is fake, obviously, but like the grenade had a like similar explosive power to the mechanical charges. And I think for a 5-on-5, it's just about, I always think a grenade over a trap is better in 5-on-5 because it's mobile.
How
Like,
do you set the trap in a
yeah, like 5 on a trap is like you, like in the Viet
I
Cong.
Bouncing Betty I could see as a trap in that scenario.
Yeah,
But that's about it.
In the Viet Cong episode, it's like, oh, they would set, you know, they'd go on a trail or an area where they knew Americans were coming through, and they would set like a grenade trap, a tripwire. And you're like, you can see how that would be effective, because if there's 30 guys walking in a spread out and one hits a trip mine and blows up, like that's more, it affects your morale. And you can see the odds are in favor of someone hitting something like that. In 5-on-5, like, what are the odds that a musketeer walks up and picks up a sword out of the ground and gets blown up? And what are the odds that more than one of them is going to be standing there when he does it? I would much rather have in this scenario a grenade that you
like
can,
a couple of them too.
yeah,
I mean,
that you
they're
can
not
light
that big.
and throw. I mean, we see in the sim, I think, a pretty good shot where the Ming guy gets down behind cover so he doesn't get shot, and the musketeer just throws a grenade around the corner and it blows him up. And It's like that's what grenades are for right there. Like you can throw them behind cover and just get the guy.
You watched the wrong video. The Ming guy's behind there, and the Musketeer takes out a little shovel and he starts digging a hole. He gets his 2 pots out.
You really are pissed about.
Oh, I hate it.
Don't be a sore winner, okay? This is the one thing the Ming gets like more kills with, so I think you need to lay off it a little bit, all right?
If it makes you feel better, then I actually found it on Wikipedia.
The mechanical landmine.
Well, it's not actually mechanical, but there are landmines.
See, that's what I found. Yeah, like there were landmines that they had.
Well, imagine you could make a trap.
Long Jin, which is known as the Fire Dragon Manual.
Yeah.
It shows all like how these landmines were created. So that's pretty interesting. So, but none of that the weird one. So I could see this happening, but just to give like the devil's advocate.
That's kind of what I was bringing up, Brennan, is I didn't find this specific thing, but like I did find multi-charge like landmines that the Mings did use.
Yeah, like you could make black powder like landmines and charge and stuff. It's just the way the show presents it with this ridiculous
it's just a goofy weapon.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on it, so why don't we just like move on from it?
Couldn't agree more. So going on to what I assume is medium range, we have the wheel-lock pistol. Stats for the wheel-lock pistol: a range of 25 yards, weight 3.5 pounds, 50 caliber ball, and made of wood and steel. The show says it could only be made by the hands of clockmakers. We get an extremely in-depth demonstration of how the wheel-lock works, where it's like, I've never seen any other weapon explained like that in depth of like the entire firing mechanism.
Gunpowder and a bullet are loaded in the barrel. Additional gunpowder is placed into a flash pan. A key turns the spring-loaded grooved wheel mechanism, creating tension. A metal arm with iron pyrite at the end is placed on top of the wheel. When the trigger is pulled, the tension is released, spinning the wheel against the pyrite. This spark ignites the gunpowder that fires the gun.
Anything interesting on the wheel lock?
Hey, before you start talking, Lucas, right before the wheel lock's introduced, we get a funny shot of a Ming deserter getting his foot chopped off.
Oh yeah,
it's really goofy, so I just have to.
Is that real?
Yeah, because anytime we get a comment in our comment section of a funny scene that we missed, I take it personally. I'm like MJ. I'm like, I took that personal.
And I took that personally.
I do like it when you guys find that stuff, though. It does crack me up. But I'm always like, dang it, I missed that. So I'm sorry. Go on.
Now that I've whined a bunch, this was actually one of the things I was most excited to research on this episode. Keep it quick. If you want a more in-depth even than the show goes into description of what I'm going to tell you and what the show does, there's a YouTube channel called Cap and Ball. And as you can imagine, they cover a lot of
cap and ball torture.
No cap.
It's not that. But they have a video called...
Talking about a blasting cap, guys.
Mind up.
They have a video called 17th Century Wheel Lock Pistols in Action. It's like 20 minutes. It's pretty interesting. Gives you like a whole breakdown of it. But this was the first self-igniting firearm ever and was developed in Europe around 1500, so it fits our time period. In 1570s, French gun makers developed their version of the wheel lock, which was compact, elegantly shaped, and lighter, with its own distinct appearance. However, they were commonly made in .37 ball, but some were also in 50 cal.
It's 38 calibers, actually, you say that.
Thanks, Greg. The wheel lock, they give you how it works with a spring-loaded steel against a piece of pyrite to generate intense sparks. As they point out on the show, it's similar to how a Bic lighter works today. As you can imagine, they were relatively costly, but as the show points out in a little excerpt we get here, the French were doing just fine at this time and could afford them. If you look inside one of these things, honestly, and that Cap and Ball video does it too, where they like show a little bit of the inside, it is extremely intricate. There's like a bajillion parts inside of one of these things. And there's even a, like the process just to load one of these things, which they kind of cover on the show, is like, it just looks ridiculous. Supposedly, the wheel lock could either be very reliable or very unreliable, depending on who made it. So the French, who had money and when they designed their own one in the 1570s, and they did have watchmakers. They made supposedly more reliable, like decent versions of this gun. That's all.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was really interested to hear what you had to say because the wheel locks, it's just a cool thing. I'm really glad they brought something like unique like that on instead of just like a flintlock pistol.
Well, that's what it's like something I have honestly like not really seen besides this show. And
Yeah.
like, what is this? But I'll have some more after we cover the test.
Cool. Before the test, we get introduced to the 3-barrel pole gun. Stats are a range of 10 yards. Is that right?
That's what did they say?
Jesus.
Well,
I didn't even pay attention to that.
We can get into it.
Yeah. Weight of 11 pounds, 69 caliber ball.
Nice.
Oh my God. I tried to be mature. Made of iron and wood. The show calls it the very first semi-automatic slaughterer. And in the B-roll, we see a really bad attempt at faking recoil when the pole gun is shot, where the actor does like a little hip thrust. He's like, it's like how he tries to fake the recoil. It's really funny.
For all of the tests on these two guns, it's all fake gun sounds. Every gun sound is fake. It's all
even in the test.
Yes. Yeah. I did notice that.
Sounds.
Not only are they fake, you know what they reminded me of, and they sound very similar to. They sound
Gun app.
that, but they also sound like Dom Mazzetti bro science shot videos.
I imagine in real life it probably made more of like a sound or something. So they're like, oh, we're gonna put in the
or like organ trip.
I actually didn't notice it until the wheel lock test, because it shows him take 2 of his shots and then his third shot is off screen. They don't show him fire it, but they show it hit the target, and they insert that stupid sound effect.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, wait a minute. I was like, this is like the shooting gallery at like Kennywood or Deep Cut for the Pittsburgh Heads, or whatever carnival you're at. You know, it's like where the gun, you're firing it and it goes bang, bang, bang.
I'm going to get into the reliability after we cover the test here, but I have a theory that they didn't even take that last shot. They were having a lot of trouble with that pistol.
Yeah, I'm sure it was friggin' rigged like every other reliability test on here. But
Matt, anything about the pole gun?
Well, before I get into the pole gun, I want to get into armor.
Okay, because that is a big part of this test.
This is the test where they test the armor. And Ming armor was not leather lamelier, as I mentioned earlier. Instead, the most common armor they wore was known as brigandine armor. It was made of a rough material, so either heavy cloth, leather, or canvas. But what's important is that it was lined with steel plates. So you'd have like steel plates bent underneath like the material and like fused onto it. I'm pretty sure this leather lamelier is just because they had some left over from the Attila the Hun episode. So they're like reusing it, or they had extras of it and it was cheaper to get their hands on than an actual... I have a similar complaint in the Roman Centurion episode with like chainmail being given instead of like a segmenta, but we're not going to get it. That's not this episode. As far as a steel cuirass goes that we see the Musketeers wear, it never really gained popularity in China at this time because gunpowder was starting to render armor obsolete. So by the time guys were starting to wear these things, guns were just able to penetrate steel plates, so there was no point in wearing like really heavy armor. It was better for you to be mobile. And my big complaint is that this 3-pole gun, I guess we can cover it when we get to the test, but I'm pretty sure, as Lucas has mentioned many times on this show, they underpower their projectile weapons. They like to underpower the bow. They like to underload these muskets. We bring it up in the pirate episode with the flintlock pistol. By any research that we've done, online, obviously we have not ordered a steel cuirass and shot it ourselves, but maybe someday.
Look forward to that Xenu short.
Once we get the Dr. Squatch sponsorship. But from any research you can find, these era of muskets and stuff, they go, certain shots can glance off armor, but like a lot of times they just go right through it. And so I really do wonder how much black powder was loaded into this 3-barrel pole gun. And I would have liked to see the steel plate get shot more than one time by it, because it should just go through. As far as the 3-barrel pole gun, this weapon did indeed exist, and it is one of the most common types of hand cannons used during the Ming Dynasty. The Chinese name for it is Sanyan Chong, meaning three-eyed gun. It typically had some form of pole arm on the rear of the weapon, so it could be used for melee after it was fired. You know, you could like spin it around and it had like, you know, a pitchfork or something on the other end of it. Those are the drawings I saw of it. And the Ming had access to a variety of gunpowder weapons. While researching, I found a 5-barrel version of this as well that like actually fired and like...
Would the Ming have won if they had the 5-barrel pull?
Yeah, the 5-barrel controversy.
What's stopping them from doing like 40 and just like...
As I said, you know, the Ming could have had like muskets and stuff, but they're trying to bring on something unique. And this is the first of 2 hand cannons we will see this season. The second hand cannon is actually just called the hand cannon in the Vlad episode. And a hand cannon is sort of like the first kind of black powder weapon, like before the musket. And the reason I bring this up to like the range of 10 yards, hand cannons are like not accurate. It's like a short barrel thing that you are literally, you're carrying around like this tube with a musket in it, and you light that powder, and why you carry it around is because if you hit somebody at point blank range with it, like it kills them and you don't have to fight them with a sword or anything like that. But they're not as accurate as like a musket's got like a longer barrel, and then eventually you get rifling that makes stuff even more accurate. But the hand cannon probably didn't have much of an effective range over that. Like it is an inaccurate weapon inherently, and I was surprised at how accurate it was in the test. Like he hit the mannequin 3 times, I guess because they're doing it from like point blank. They typically didn't fire on a little stand. A Ming would typically, all the drawings I saw of it, the depictions from that time had guys holding it over their shoulder, and then you could turn it around and have like a stabby on the other
Something
end.
they don't address about that is, from my understanding, it's I forget what they call it, but it's like the black powder charges are in there, and you have to have a torch in your one hand or something lit.
Yeah,
to stick it in the hole.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not as reliable a mechanism as something like this, where you can put it in the pan
and create
like
your own spark. Like
you're going in with a shot like preloaded. Yeah, these things are not. They're not as good as muskets, but it is cool that they bring one on to show like you can light it and then spin, and then that's why they're going with 3 barrels, because it's like it's worth the extra weight and the cumbersomeness of it, because this isn't as deadly as one shot with a rifle. You want to be able to boom, boom, boom like 3 times in a row at a guy with this thing. So again, kind of with the other Ming weapons, they could have given them something better here. However, it's cool that they brought it on. It's unique. I think it's cool that they brought it on. It was kind of impressive to see it like hit the target, though I think it's maybe a little underpowered. And I guess my biggest complaint...
They didn't want it to blow up.
yeah, right. I guess my biggest complaint is that they only tested against armor one time.
Well, do you know what I just had this thought? Do you think they only do that because they can't afford 4 breastplates and 4 different like lavaliers?
Even the same breastplate, though, I would like to see it get shot. I mean, I know it's because...
I think it's the inaccuracy.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to shoot the breastplate 3 times, but one hits in the neck and one hits in the arm.
I know that's that inaccuracy. I think that's deliberate. So, well, do you want to get into like the test at this point? Do you have anything else to say about the pole gun?
I don't have anything more to say. It is real. You can look it up, the Sanyan Chong. pretty cool. I was happy to see that this was a real thing.
They have one in the video game For the King, which is essentially a D&D simulator. If you ever want to play that, it's excruciatingly difficult. My girlfriend played.
in case you don't feel like reading The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas, go ahead and play For the King.
It's good.
Never heard of that game.
It's actually really good. It's like a D&D simulator. I'll tell you about it later.
Cool. Pretty good podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. So stay tuned. Whole gun goes up against side by side the wheel lock pistol. First we get Jonathan, who aims for the breastplate of the Musketeer, which I should say is the point of the test. They ask them to shoot at the armor to see what happens. And it does not penetrate. He then aims for the unarmored neck and arm, which is very accurate. So I think he deliberately aims for those parts because they're unarmored, and he's like, well, I'm not getting anywhere with this. May as well shoot a dummy in the neck. I'm
really not convinced he's able to aim it that well. I do think it's like
he's just shooting it.
I don't think it's like dead accurate, like in the middle of the neck, and then also like right here in the arm, which isn't a vital point. But I think
break that humor to make the sword arm useless.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's see your main gauche now, boy.
Yeah. So I think it is a deliberate attempt. So Jeff points out that the armor protected the Musketeer, and Jonathan argues that the Musketeer is slow, just in general. And the other two shots...
All that inbreeding. Sorry.
Every time they show a Ming actor in like the full armor, they are so slow and like unwieldy. Look, watch them in the show. Like they like slowly move along, but they like claim that they're so fast and everything. Yeah. But they're in all of this armor and they're like...
It reminded me, I rewatched like the first 3 Matrixes not that long ago, and it reminded me of just like the kung fu fights, like when Neo fights Morpheus and they're going like... You know, they're spinning around each other and jumps up in the air and kicks him. Like, yeah, that's what the Mings were doing. Your average Ming soldier, one of a million guys, they all could do that.
Yeah. So the other two shots, I mean, we debate if it's either extremely accurate or extremely not accurate. I guess it's up to interpretation. Xavier points out Jonathan aimed around the armor, which was not the point of the test, and which is true. Then they test the wheel lock. The wheel lock shoots straight through the Ming armor, and there's 3 instant kills. Xavier says, voila. Jonathan argues the misfires that they had during the test, which there's like 2 or 3, hampered the test. But Max says that in the sim, those would be 3 kills, suggesting that misfires don't happen in the sim. And then he says that, I like this line, he says the Musketeer armor covers a significant portion of his surface area. Just to sound smart. Yeah.
But you know what is vulnerable is the...
No reflex kill zone.
No reflex kill zone.
The surface area, no reflex kill zone is. So yeah, I mean, he has the 3 misfires, and that was, I think, really interesting. Where he's like, because they've said in the aftermath that every warrior gets a clean gun. So is reliability not in there, or do they like to compensate for reliability, lower the fire rate? Like,
was that gun he was using not clean? Like, you know, how often was he using it?
I got some things about that.
I will say what I say anytime reliability comes up on here. Based on what I see, every reliability misfire that takes place in this show is 100% faked.
I do it twice, you think?
I think it's always staged or faked. Maybe with this one, they got like a weird old gun and they were having trouble with it. But
at the flea market.
Yeah, honestly, I think those reliability things are always faked to give them something to talk about. And we've proved on this show before, like ones that were fake.
Scientifically proved.
We have. IRA versus Taliban. You watch the AR versus the AK.
That is a fake test.
That is 100% a fake test, which calls into question every other reliability test they do on here because they play it completely straight. They're like, well, we saw in the sim, like this misfired. And to me, that's damning that like, these are all fake.
He's holding like the gun backwards. He's like, it's jammed.
Yeah, and it's jammed. And so I'm pretty sure if there is a sim reliability is a 0% factor. Max
kind of admitting that here.
Max always pulls out.
I think
this
that's a good thing.
He always pulls out this shit in these other episodes where he's like, "Well, it's like a probability," like, and I'm just like, "No, it's fucking not." I know Max can't come out and just say it's fake, but like, it is. Like, that's not in the computer game, because but how could you factor that in?
You talk about you don't want reliability, but you're saying then the mechanical landmine would then be 100% accurate all the time.
Well, I'm saying, why don't they address
earlier.
that then? If they're going to address it for one, why don't they address it for the other?
Yeah, that's true.
So why does this thing keep misfiring on the test? This is such a common thing with black powder, specifically guns, on this show. And I kind of agree with you, what you're saying. I think this is because of the armor. One punched through and one didn't. So how are they going to create the tension on this episode?
Yep.
Not everyone fires these things every day, too. Xavier is an actor, and they ask him to reload this thing quickly for the tests, and I assume he doesn't put powder in the tray properly, is what they show. They show him fixing it by just tapping on the side of the gun, which is not how it works.
I noticed that he misfires, and then he takes the gun and kind of gives it a little baby spank.
Like that's gonna tap the powder back.
You would do
place.
to get your baby to burp. He like hits the gun like that and then goes like this, and it just fires, and it's like, what the fuck?
I do think for this one they had an actual firing gun, and I think whether it was a replica or something, or like a cheaply made, I do think they were having, because we said that they faked that for third shot. They do not show the gunfire.
Yeah.
They put in the fake sound. I do think they were having trouble with this replica that day, though.
The other funny thing of this test is, like, all the footage of in between the shots, it's like the same B-roll of him reloading it. Like the same shot of him putting the ball in, the same shot over, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's a great point. I thought the wheel lock test was really sketchy. And whether he was intentionally missing the armor or not with the 3-pole test, because of how vital the steel cuirass was in the final results, they should have made it so that there was at least another 1 or 2 shots in the armor. Like, one shot is not enough to determine whether it can or can't go. Yeah, I think that's faulty logic. And of course the last point being they don't use the right armor for the Ming. Like, they use leather.
It looks like crap. It looks like Spirit of Halloween.
It
stuff.
does.
Like,
it looks like shit.
Yeah,
that was a real piece of Ming armor from my own collection.
Right. And I think that's why they used it, Scott, was because they had it like laying around or left over, and they're like, we could make this complicated like steel bands woven into cloth or whatever, or we can just take this leather we have laying around and slap that on there.
It looks like a cosplay made out of a street hockey chest protector.
and they make this big thing about like, well, he aimed at the armor with the wheel lock, and it's like, no shit. No one is wondering if a wheel lock can shoot through like leather armor. Like, it's absurd. So while I did kind of find this test interesting, I guess positives being 2 unique and cool guns on here, there was a lot fishy about it, and it was probably the test that I had the most Dwayne Johnson eyebrow raises at. I was like, I don't know about all this.
Yeah,
like,
they paint the picture
not
like
the 2 completely fake explosive tests like right before. Well, to be fair, I mean, dude, it's tough competition.
That's par for the course.
That's
like,
true.
I wasn't bothered by that at all, because all the explosive tests are faked. And honestly, we should probably just be thankful for that, because that way nobody got hurt on this set. And also, like, the explosives that they plant in the ground are a lot cooler than like what that grenade would have done. Yeah, it was cooler that they just blew up that whole freaking wagon and like just destroyed all those mannequins. Like, that's a cooler shot than whatever, going through all the trouble to actually like get a grenade and like throw it.
You know, sorry to relitigate this, but you should have brought this up, Lucas. How convenient is it that the mechanical landmine is able to be buried completely, and they have to throw the grenade into a cart that is completely covered up?
Yeah.
like they think they're so slick.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
nothing to do with the Ming at all.
Well, they always find their way to hide it.
Yeah, and we always point out, like, when it was hidden in the pig in the Viet Cong episode, or when it's under the couch in the Al Capone episode, and
that's why they build those stupid elaborate.
And you
sets.
can see in the slow mo where the blast is like coming from, and it's like, That's coming from under the couch.
The grenade's like over here.
Yeah.
It's like, woo, woo. I am glad they do the 0%. Like they just don't even factor in reliability.
It shouldn't be.
Though,
it's a video game.
Yeah, you can't tell me the pull gun wouldn't like act up just as much as the wheel lock.
Yeah, and especially, I guess you reminded me of a point I was going to actually say about these two that hasn't been brought up, and that is that a wheel lock is like that's an expensive piece of equipment. Like it needs to be handmade by someone who knows what they're doing. It's a fine, refined weapon. The 3-barrel pole gun is crude. Like it is a crude, like cast iron thing that you can mass produce. And that goes into what I was saying earlier, is that the Ming is outfitted with stuff that's affordable. Like the Ming Dynasty, if you have that large an army, you're just fielding. You can field them with, as long as it's good enough, it can get the job done. Whereas the Musketeers are a smaller force and they're nobility, so they can afford like this fine equipment, like a musket and a wheel lock. So I just thought that was a cool, I guess, difference between the two. But honestly, I guess to wrap this section up, I would say, based on what we see, I have to agree with the edge. And honestly, based on my own research, I mean, I think the wheel lock is more accurate, causes more damage. The Ming could have had something similar to a wheel lock that would have been better, but for one-on-one testing, I think wheel lock should get the edge.
Yeah,
the edge goes to the wheel lock.
I'd rather carry the wheel lock.
Yeah.
Carry multiple.
Like the pirate. The pirate would be carrying. You like how he just pulls that out of his ass in that episode where he's like, well, your flintlock didn't work. Yeah, well, the pirate would have like 5 of these on.
He had like 50, bro.
Yeah. Like there was a standard pirate kit.
So going to short range, I assume.
Yeah.
We got the rapier and main gooch. So the stats are...
Is that made from French?
Yeah.
The gooch?
Daniel Tosh. He tore his gooch.
So
Maybe.
the stats are 4 feet and 1.5 feet, 3 pounds and 4 pounds, which is weird that the main gooch is heavier. I guess maybe more material. It's double-edged and made of steel. So my question for you guys is, how would the gooch be used in conjunction with the rapier?
It's
like
the skateboarder kid. Sorry, I was looking up the Tosh.0 clip where he says he tore his gooch, and it's the skateboard kid who is doing like a kickflip, and the skateboard jams up in between his legs, and he falls over, and Tosh just looks at the camera. He's like, he tore his gooch.
Keep that queued up. We're gonna watch it after.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Yeah, how would you... Because he sort of explains it, I think, a bit on the aftermath. How are you supposed to use that second blade?
Well, they talk it's like mostly defense. Like it's got those prongs where if someone reaches in, you could like hook it and pull it away.
It's a sword and dagger combo.
Yeah,
like,
that's like
you've got... If you're not bothering with a shield, you can...
Yeah.
So the recreations that they use in the show that I found on a website are based off excavated pieces from the south of France, dated around 1600. The main gauche is more commonly known as a parrying dagger. This use of the secondary handheld dagger gradually fell off, though, as sword fighting evolved into... This is exactly what I pictured when they brought these weapons out, and what they kind of evolved into the modern sport of fencing is what these are based. Information was not as common as I honestly thought it would be. The rapier throughout history was a weapon of choice for gentlemen more than something for soldiers. They were essentially designed...
It's the inspiration for the Bravozy water dancer in the Game of Thrones. They have the little... They have exactly like...
Instead of holding that dagger, you put your hand behind your back. They were essentially designed for doing that forward thrust, but were much more ineffective with slashing. Because I think he says on the show at some point that, it can be used for slashing. It wasn't commonly used for that. They were, of course, used in battle, but more were commonly carried by officers who were trained in the sport of fencing and were known to be a good civilian self-defense weapon for gentlemen in a disagreement. As I've kind of suspected, this is more of like a dueling or show type blade, honestly, than it was combat effective. And it was commonly, instead of worn with like military garb, it was worn with fancy clothing.
Trying to get that random barmaid to hit on.
At the end of the day, I will stay, because I'm sure there's some fans of the like rapier gauche style of fighting. It is still a blade. It could still kill you in the right hands, but it is more of like a dueling honorable weapon than it is like a straight up hack and slash combat weapon.
I have to say, Luke, I guess I'll save this, but when he tests this weapon, it is extremely underwhelming. Like, the Dao test is so much cooler. Like, he's hacking these pigs in half, and the rapier is like he's stabbing the ballistics gel and it's barely going through, and it's like bending. Like the sword is.
There's a lot of
yeah, and I'm like, this sword looks really freaking flimsy, and I don't know. Like, I'm sure it's a style of sword fighting. I don't know anything about sword fighting.
Well, it evolved into fencing. It's the sword itself is designed. That bending is intentional. It's just, I mean, that's how, because this, I mean, when you look at it compared to like the Dao, it's not a combat focused weapon. It is like a for show, for dueling.
Yeah. Is a rapier meant to, like, when it stabs you, like, is it meant to drive through you like a regular sword? Because we've never seen any other weapon on this show like bend against a ballistic gel like that, I guess. Like, any other time they've tested a sword on a ballistic gel, it goes right through it or stabs right through it, and it's never surprising to us. But like the rapier, I noticed was like getting caught up in like bending. It's an honest question because I don't know anything about like that
I'm no expert on it for sure, but I know I mean, it is still like hardened steel and it's capable of having that flex, but in itself it is absolutely capable of killing you, and was used in real duels of stabbing people. But I mean, that's what it was for. It was just for like a stabbing thrust. And then that's why a lot of the, like, you think of like the Three Musketeers or even like some of those
Orlando
like
Bloom,
Zorro
Charlie Sheen,
and stuff,
Leo and Man in the Iron Mask,
where it's at like parrying, like almost like a dance, like sword fighting style. So I mean,
so what I found with it, so it's got a long reach. Like, I think it has another foot on the Dao. I think it's got 4 feet versus the Dao's 3 feet. And I read it was designed for like these precise strikes that get between gaps in armor.
That makes sense.
Which would have been a cool thing to see if we would have taken the street hockey protector and put it on and be like, hey, can he poke and get at like little
joints,
spots in the like below the arm for
the Ming's not just going to stand there.
He's not just going to stand there and take it though, which everyone would know.
There is a good meme at 30:45 timestamp where Luke says, "It takes nothing for me to be able to deliver over 3.5 feet of cold steel to someone." Immediately afterward, they cut to a shot of Jeff's face, and Jeff is looking at the sword, and you see him do like a nervous gulp. Like the weapon isn't. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Like he's intimidated. Like Luke says that the least intimidating looking guy is holding this goofy ass sword, and he's like, you know, I could kill somebody with this. And it zooms in on Jeff, and Jeff is like, like he's shook by this guy. This guy's like 2 feet shorter than Jeff, and he's like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to shit on you so bad, Luke, but you know, Jeff's just like towering over him, and he's like, gosh.
I love the part too where the Ming guys are kind of shitting on it, and then he's like, oh, it's and he goes, it's not that, it's one.
I think I could do several different strikes in continuous motion instead of one. Pull back.
No, we don't do that.
Reset again.
There's no one pull back. It's one. 5 times.
It's like, okay,
it's not one. It's one. It's like, love it.
There's also another funny meme where it's like B-roll of the Team Musketeer on their little table with their weapons, and Luke is standing behind the table, and he's like eating something off of the main ghost dagger. There's something on the tip of it, and he just bites into it.
Gentlemen.
So they ordered on set.
And the other meme I noticed was after the rapier and main gauche test, Dorian comes over and pulls the main gauche out of the eyeball and goes, I think this belongs to you, sir. And Luke says, merci beaucoup.
You can speak French?
Yeah.
So who would win in a fight? Spamming or one.
Button mash.
It's like when you and your little brother play a fighting game. Just like
You and your little brother just like beep, 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 beep. Which is this the test where Jeff does the undo trois?
Yeah,
he goes,
Trois, deux, oh.
Took intro to
And then
Rosetta
he says,
Stone. For this.
Allez.
yeah, so we guys pretty much covered the entire test. Luke goes in on a dummy. As we say, these tests mean nothing. Jeff counts down in French. Receiver who? Jonathan says he could do several strikes in continuous motion before Luke could pull by the rapier back, which has kind of covered.
and then he goes forward to not do that in his demonstration.
Then we move on to the Tao,
Which is described by the narrator as a slicer and dicer.
It slices and dices.
The writer was just running out at that. He's like deadlines tomorrow, and he's like, fuck. He's like slicer and dicer, and the editor's like, you can do better than that. And he's like, nah, just turn it in. Just get it in.
They bring the slap chop. Slap. Slap.
So the stats on the Tao are a length of 3 feet, so pretty long. Weight 2.5 pounds, which is light for being that long. Single edge and made of steel. Anything interesting on the Tao?
Yeah, actually, the Tao was the easiest weapon for me to research because it's very popular. The Tao did exist and was in fact the primary close quarters weapon of the Ming era, replacing the double-edged Jian favored by the Yuan dynasty. So a Jian, Jian, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Again, I'm sorry, is a double-edged sword, whereas a Tao is a single-edged sword, which Philip talks about how you can press it with the back end. The Tao is a single-edged saber and can be found in both a one-handed sword form, and I also saw drawings of it like stylized as like a glaive, like a two-handed glaive that you could use on foot against cavalry. Whereas if you're on horseback, you want the saber because it's a lot more wieldy. And you just come down with that curved blade as you're riding, and it just is going to hack right through someone. In China, it is
just like their butter.
In China, it is considered one of the 4 traditional weapons, including the gun, which is Chinese for staff. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing these, but the qiang, which is a spear, and the jian, which is the double-edged sword, and the 4th one being the Tao. So the Avatar had to learn how to bend all 4 of these. No, I'm kidding. In modern China, they do wushu routines where you master these weapons. I talked about that in the Shaolin episode a little bit. And the Tao is one of those weapons you see where they put like the red fabric on it so they can hear it because it's going so fast when they're doing the routine so they can hear it. And as we've gotten into the modern era, Taos have become like less and less heavy and more flimsy so that they can make the noise. They make a cool noise and they can go really fast. So the Taos you see nowadays are not like really weapons. A funny note I had before we get to the test is if you Google Ming Dao, the first result you'll get is a Taiwanese actor, singer, and model. Ming Dao.
Fun facts. So the test, Philip cuts up 2 pigs. That's it. Philip is faster than Luke, and Jeff says the proof is in the pig. So they give the edge to the Tao. Jeff says because the Tao is more versatile to slash and thrust. I mean, I don't disagree. I would be interested to see a master of the Dao versus a master of the rapier, but I don't blame them for not being able to do that.
I noticed that during the test, Philip actually stumbles a little bit when he's going between the two pigs, and it's because he's slipping on like all the fake blood on the floor. So I'm glad that he didn't get injured in his test.
He almost tore his gooch.
He tore his gooch. He's like, he hacks up this pig and then he turns around and he's like, because it hit this
fluid motion.
And I was like, that seemed a bit clumsy from what we've seen from this guy. And they pan out and show it, and it's like, oh, he slips on like that excess amount of blood they put in these targets.
I used to think that was real. Like, this is whenever a pig dies, they just have all this blood. And then you watch it as an adult and you're like, what is this? Is like the chocolate from Willy Wonka. It's like,
yeah. I have on here, they gave the edge to the Dao for its versatility and speed. I find it interesting that they did not test either sword against armor, especially if they gave the Ming their actual armor, because I think that's why we see the results we do in the test between these two swords. I'm curious to see how the rapier would fare against, the Brangadine armor that I mentioned earlier, and I can't imagine that the Dao would penetrate that steel cuirass at all. As far as the edge goes, I really don't have a strong opinion because I'm not as learned on swords, and it really seems like these are two different styles of sword. Like, one is for thrusting and you're trying to get at gaps in armor, and a Dao is like I mean, you're just going ham. And really, it's a cavalry saber. Like, it's meant to be wielded from horseback.
Going ham on two pigs.
Yeah, on two pigs. Thank you.
proof is in the pig. So,
do either of you guys have opinions on the edge?
I agree with it. I think the Dao is more combat effective. Just combat effective.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
I could see it going either way, honestly. I mean,
yeah.
If we saw more of an example of like the precision of the rapier, and plus you do get the second weapon with the mangosh, I mean, I could see it either way. I'm not upset about it as other edges, but I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Either way, I don't know.
No opinion.
No opinion.
So I think it's time, gentlemen, for the moment we've all been waiting for. We have Lucas as your sim master again.
Everybody hit your enter keys at home.
I need some sim juice. With all the testing complete, you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen. Join me, your sim master, in the deadliest warrior land of make-believe, where a French musketeer will take on a Ming warrior. We open up on some French musketeers patrolling through a forest. Meanwhile, some Ming warriors are hotboxing a cave and peek out to take a look. We see a shot of 4 Ming warriors, but where is number 5? Of course, he's burying a mechanical landmine, the most practical and realistic weapon in the world. He sticks a sword in the ground, thinking, hey, some stupid jackass is going to take this and blow himself up, because this is the most practical and realistic weapon in the world. The Ming warriors take notice of the French musketeers and pull out the nest of bees. In a really shitty animation graphic, he launches the arrows at the oblivious French musketeers. Oh shit! They take notice and have time to take cover behind a tree.
A single tree.
All except one who gets hit in the leg and pulls it out and moves on. The musketeers return fire with their muskets. A Ming warrior draws his Dao, roars the mighty scream into the air as he gets blasted center chest for our first kill.
Dude, I noticed every time someone gets shot in this reenactment, it is the funniest shit. Like, it is filmed so funny. Like, they just go straight down.
Both sets of warriors advance towards each other, but the actors in the Ming warrior costumes still are like really clumsily and slow. He pulls out the pull gun, fires a shot straight into one of the French musketeers. We get the legendary Deadliest warrior. Oh!
Yeah.
Sound effect.
It plays 3 times during the reenactment. I have the timestamps.
It does, and then when they're doing the wrap up at the end, they play it like 4 more times. Get used to hearing it. But what's this? That shot was non-fatal because it hit the cuirass the musketeer was wearing. We get another musket shot straight into a Ming warrior, and he falls like a tree rolling down the hill. Then the French musketeer goes to help his brother up, forgetting he's in the middle of a battle. The guy he helps up instantly gets shot through the forehead and goes right back down.
It's really funny.
The French musketeer then fits a bayonet to his musket and finishes the kill on the guy who rolled down the hill. Brutal.
It's like the second worst stab effect in this episode. Like the worst one was the one I brought up before. This one, you can clearly see they're even shooting it from the proper angle, but you can still see it just go right like under the guy's.
It's like a high school film class.
But not only does he stick him with the bayonet, he does the look at the flick of the wrist and twists it.
And the Ming guy, like you can see the blood packet in his mouth, like he's hiding it on the one side, and then you can see the minute like he bites it too. Like,
so the Ming warrior retreats. The rest of them retreat, and they all walk over top of the mechanical landmine, the most practical and realistic weapon we've ever seen. Then all of the French musketeers run past, avoiding temptation, except for one poor unfortunate soul. He grabs the sword as a free trophy and is killed by the most practical and realistic weapon we have ever seen.
I'm shocked we don't see a Ming cut off a guy's ear in this fucking segment. Like,
well, what is to become of that guy? His fellow brothers come back. The leader tips his hat, seeing that his brother has fallen victim to the most practical and realistic weapon.
That's also like the worst explosion effect that they've ever had on here. There is so many like bad CGI effects in this reenactment. Like the guy who gets killed right after this like gets shot, and it's like if you pause it at the right moment, you can see like the copy and pasted CGI blood effect, and like that it's not on his head. Like his head is moving, and like it looks so bad. Maybe I'll get a timestamp for Craig so he can like
I'll
put
be able
the
to find
image in. But I noticed like I know the graphics on this show aren't ever like blowing you away, but like they're particularly bad in this reenactment. Yeah, it was really funny.
The Nest of Bees is really bad at the beginning too.
I was like cracking up the whole time.
All right, I'm done with the
mechanical landmine.
The mechanical landmine. So back in the fight, another French musketeer gets shot in the neck by the pull gun. We get another sound effect.
I think that's the kill, by the way, that like the bad blood effect is on.
Is it? Yeah. The Ming warrior, realizing he's fired all three of his shots, starts jerking off his gun behind a rock. Hearing that,
he's nervous.
Very distinctive sound, we all know. From behind the rock, the musketeer pulls out a grenade. He chucks it behind the rock and kills the Ming warrior before he could finish reloading his gun. They trek up the hill some more when out of nowhere a Ming warrior slices a musketeer, killing him. Oh man, it's not looking good for the musketeers. 1v2. It's about to get the upper hand when the wheel lock pistol doesn't fire. Oh shit, reliability. The rapier Mangosh comes out, and we get a good old-fashioned sword fight. Now, let's remember which sword got the edge. The Ming warrior swings, but the musketeer does a perfect parry and stabs him through the gut. 1v1, my dudes.
Yeah.
The last Ming warrior, enraged by his buddy's death, flails his dowel around.
They miss a golden opportunity to just pull like an Indiana Jones where he just pulls a wheellock out and shoots him, and that's the end.
That would have been such a better ending.
I know. It's like that would have been, yeah.
The dude does come up with the doubt, and it's just he's going as hard as like the experts when they're first introduced. He's like got the sword. He's like, oh, that would be a perfect shot.
Like, come on,
Musketeer to pull out the wheel lock and just go
shoot him in the face.
The best ending. Whoa, let me read you the second best ending.
The wheel lock misfires, and so the Musketeer goes and then shoots.
Yes, that would be great. See, 5 minutes and we already wrote a better script.
Let me read you the second best ending. They meet and we get yet another sword fight. There is no fucking way the sword that didn't get the edge will kill two people. We get some back and forth clashing. Another parry, and the Mangosh gets a kill as it's stabbed through the Ming warrior's stomach. The musketeer wins, and at the end, he says something French that I tried to translate and couldn't.
I think he says "Vive la France."
Vive la France.
Is that what it is? But he says it like really weird.
That's what they always say. But
No, the last word is "qual." It sounds like though.
I think he's going France.
Vive la qual.
Vive la France.
So Musketeer wins.
yeah. Before I get into the results real quick, I want to say this is one of the most predictable aftermaths because one, you have a very clear main character who you see just like the whole action is around him.
PewDiePie the whole time.
Yeah. And the other thing is clearly the Musketeers are the good guys. There is at least double the amount of footage from the Musketeers' perspective than the Ming. Like the Ming are always shot like pretty much a shot as like the opposition, like shot towards them versus like over the shoulder, or you'll get some like the Musketeers like in cover to where you feel like, okay, these are my guys, this is my team.
Yeah.
And it's super obvious. Like I don't think I even watched this episode, like I said. And as soon as it started, I was like, oh, the Musketeers gonna win.
3 words. Reign of Terror. Ming Warrior.
Yeah.
I think that's we cover that every episode. I always compare it to wrestling because I feel like there's always a face character and a heel character, like the one you're supposed to be rooting for, and they're tailoring it to an American audience, you know, so they're like whatever the American audience we think is going to root for more. And I guess
Whites.
Right. And I guess that's what makes you know, and the face character doesn't always win, but like most of the time they do. And I think it's what makes episodes we've already covered, like the Taliban episode and the Nazi episode, makes it so awkward is because the show is written in a way that you're supposed to be like rooting for one faction or another.
Like the Nazi episode, you're supposed to be rooting for the Nazis.
I think so. Yeah. Like they show more footage of them and like This
is particularly bad, though. This is probably the most off in terms of the amount of footage for each side I can remember.
Because they're like, most Americans aren't going to know who the Mings are even. And they're right. And, you know, it's a Chinese warrior. So it's like, you know, who we don't want them to win, right?
Americans, they like them candy bars. They'll win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to put it in like college football terms, it's like, okay, America beat the Nazis, so we need the Nazis to lose to somebody that we lost to lower them down for like the college football playoff. That's why you root for them.
Yeah,
you know?
strength of schedule. That's true, Scott. It's like Viet Cong won the Vietnam War, so we can't have them win on an American show. We beat the Nazis, so if they win, it's not as big a deal, you know, because Americans will be like, oh, well, we kicked their ass, you know, so it's all good.
True. So get into the results. Hopefully I have the numbers right this week.
That was funny. Last week you're like, I have 6, and I'm like 207.
Well, last week.
Right, yeah, last week. This is being filmed a little out of order, but.
So the Musketeer grenade gets 26 kills. The flintlock musket gets 275. The Willock musket gets 178. Or Willock pistol, I guess. Did they call it the musket? Or did I just write
They call it the pistol, but in the stats, you're right. They call it the Willock musket.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Just one of those like bad... Whoever makes those graphics constantly making mistakes.
We've talked about this. Whoever types up those results at the end could give less of a fuck. Like,
they don't even add up.
And has no overs. Like no one's checking that.
9 rounds per minute.
Yeah, sometimes
600 yards for the fucking.
Sometimes there's just like misspelling. There's like typos, and like there's one episode where the math is completely wrong, which calls into question anything about the show. And then sometimes like the weapons are like sorted out of order, like they don't match up, and it's like all it would take is one proofread to like catch any of that stuff. But it's clear someone types that up real quick in the graphic and just puts it in.
Why'd they put like flintlock musket also? It's a matchlock musket.
Yeah,
like they screwed up 2 of them.
I don't know. So then you get the Rapier Mangooch Home 95 for a total of 674.
Yeah,
very strong showing. The mechanical landmine is 199 kills, second most of the sim. The Nest of Bees 15, pole gun 41, the Dow 72, total of 326. I know Lucas loves the amount of kills in the mechanical landmine. Max says that it was because the Ming couldn't penetrate the armor that they lost. And I'm going to ask a question. based on, I think, some of the results and how the sim calculates stuff, I feel like I'm on first take. Did the Ming get out-simmed, do you think? I wrote that. I was like, it sounds like a first take question.
First take. Max Kellerman. Go full Stephen A. I will say this is the second biggest beatdown of season 2 and the fourth biggest beatdown of season 1 and 2 combined. The only beatdowns bigger than this are Spetsnaz.
That kid's gooch on the skateboard.
Spetsnaz versus IRA, Shaolin versus Maori, and Persian Immortal versus Celt. This was it was really one-sided. I mean, the Musketeer basically wins at all fronts except for the explosives, and it's because, I mean, they kind of had to what's the opposite of nerf? Buff. They had to like buff the landmine and nerf the Granado
they
big
just put the
time.
nail bomb stats in for the mechanical lamp.
Yeah, right.
Or the PMN.
Yeah. So did the Ming get out simmed? I think so, man. It's sort of a mismatch right from the start because one of these units is like meant to fight in small groups and has like really good equipment, and the Ming are like, they're not going in groups of 5. It's like we're sending in 100,000 guys
after shooting a million nest of bees.
Yeah, right, into like a village, and we were just gonna clean up like town. So I guess my biggest complaint is the breastplate makes so much difference, and when you look at the stats of the kills, Nest of Bees only getting 15 kills, the Dow being outscored by the Gooch and the Rapier. Like, obviously this bronze cuirass played a big role in that, or steel cuirass played a big role in that, and I kind of hate that it's brushed over in like one test. One weapon is tested against it one time in one test, and then they come at the end of the show and they're like, so I know we gave that 1 minute of screen time, but that was the most important thing in the show. I hope you didn't get up to like go to the bathroom during that part of the show.
But this is one of the only times that they, especially with firearms, address any armor also. Normally they just blissfully ignore it the entire time.
Yeah.
So sometimes we're sitting here going, they didn't even address the armor at all, but they did at least attempt to address the armor a little bit on this one, but it feels not that great.
I wish they just wouldn't have. I wish they would have just not included it, because I honestly think the results would be the same, but it might be a little more. I think the Musketeer still would have won based on
this right here.
Some things.
This is what wins it.
Yeah.
It's superior technology.
Yeah. Right. I think Musketeer still wins, but I think the stats might be a little more even.
Right. Now, before we get too much into like the final thoughts, I do want to cover the conclusion of the episode as well as the aftermath, and then I will give their final
I've been
take.
waiting for the aftermath whole episode.
Yeah. So the Philip says he doesn't care what a computer says, and the Ming is the deadliest warrior. I think that line was fed to him, but whatever.
It's similar to other lines we've heard. So.
Yeah. And the final noise of the episode, Xavier goes mask off and says,
I like the Ming Warriors, but I think they should go back where they come from and, build walls. They're very good at it.
Just like, say anything but that. Like, we talked about this line. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and Spike the benefit of the doubt. I don't think it was meant to be racist, but just avoid the phrase "go back where you came from" in any context, especially if you're going to be on a national TV show.
Yeah, we are not trying to like go SJW on this show and be like, ooh, let's point out everything we don't like about it. But like stuff like that sometimes is just super glaring, and it bothers me because this is such a scripted show. Why the hell doesn't the producer go in and just go, Xavier, just give us a different line? Like,
I bet that I'd almost bet that might have been like not so much a fed line, but like say something like along those lines.
Say something inflammatory. I don't know. Because he says it very confidently and not like with any sort of like tinge of regret. That you would, if you met something really racist, I think you would be like,
who knows?
Go
Maybe
back.
he said something worse in a take before that, and that was like the soft version of it. Like, okay, I guess we'll have to take what we got.
There's a trend of
We can't use that.
well, I think the Ming shit. Fuck. You're right. Yeah. Bum, bum, bum. It just cuts the credit. There is no like. Apparently, this show is shot on such a tight schedule. There's no time for reshoots. I skipped over this, but it's sort of on topic.
Week to air.
At the beginning,
Yeah.
At the beginning of the episode, Armand is given his thoughts, and he says the Musketeers are legendary, and the Ming Warrior, they come from an unbelievable empire, and I'm going to be very interesting how they match up against the Musketeer. And like that's such a minor goof, but like. Just fucking like you
do
another take. Do another take. There's so many instances, and we try. I debate sometimes whether to put stuff like that in my notes because it's so minor.
Yeah.
But it goes to show the quality of control that like they can't get some of the typing right. They can't do any reshoots or just be like, hey, just.
It's like they're making a show and someone says French. Right. And they just don't cut that part and have them say French.
That's different. That podcasts are meant to be. You were meant to have like.
If we had the budget of Deadliest Warrior, I would say Lucas, we're gonna do that again.
And you know what? What's more important than the budget is the viewership. This is like. Just see by how many people watch these podcasts we put out all these years later. Like this show was probably like the most trending show on Spike at the time.
Oh yeah,
everybody has like.
There's a reason we're still talking about it.
Everybody had heard of it, and so when you see like little things like that, we're not out here to nitpick. We're not doing the Cinema Sins counter or anything.
It's fun,
but stuff like that shows like. Why didn't they just reshoot that, or how is there a typo in that final graphic?
It's
like
fun to find the typos, though.
Yeah, Spetsnaz versus IRA. How the math is wrong? Who didn't check that? Who nobody like read that over? That could be corrected. Like no one sat there with a calculator and went. Hey, wait a minute.
Well, also, you either need to do that, and if you do that, the sim's fake, or you need to have the actual printout of the results and just do a quick comparison.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't even have to do the math if the results are real. If the results are fake, then you got to do the math.
Right.
So, So
the editing on this show is done like that project you have to turn in tomorrow morning and you're up at midnight. Shit.
It is. Yeah.
So, okay, get into the aftermath. Nothing too crazy. We'll just go beat for beat. Scott, if you have any input, I will,
Yeah.
My brother and spending $3 for a 26-minute web show.
Yes.
So
I was surprised it was 26 minutes.
It was kind of lengthy. Yeah.
I watched them back to back last night. I'm like,
what was
still going on?
What was the the aftermath? They talk about the mechanical landmine, right?
That's what I'm looking
at. Yeah.
So there is some dirt on these aftermaths. First, Kyrian always asks the losing expert if they're surprised they lost every episode, and what the fuck are they supposed to say? Like, and then and then he asks the winner,
"Nope.
What do you think? You surprised you won?" And they're like, "No." So they spend the first few minutes talking about the scars across Jonathan's body.
Very weird. It's
an extended amount of time.
He's like plugging his wushu. Is it wushu?
Yeah.
His wushu career. He's like, oh yeah, I got all these gold medals and all these scars. I have more. It's just there's a little weird. It's too long and it's weird. Kind of like this podcast.
Yeah. Got him.
Hey.
So the viewer,
some of our fans might agree with you.
So the viewer says he's a historical fencer, and he was mad that the rapier lost the edge. Max admits that they were wrong, and the sim proved them wrong, that the rapier should have gotten the edge. So.
Yeah, he pretty. It's all the questions in the aftermath are very weird. This guy is like, "Oh, I fence, so I think."
A historical fencer. I don't even know what the fuck that means.
Because I fence, it should have won the edge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I love that people just make up stuff when they write into things.
I know. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm actually a historian and professional fencer.
Yeah.
No, you're
Me eating my cereal in the morning, watching the aftermath on Spike.com. Like, I'm actually a fencer.
It's like I compare it to when we're watching UFC and we're drinking beers. If that was me, I would have just blocked that.
You would have.
Yo, I could beat Khabib. Easy.
30-0, 29-0.
So
29-1.
I'm gonna remove it.
Wait, I didn't call out Jake Paul yet this podcast. Jake Paul, fight me.
All right.
Don't actually. I don't want.
Okay. So viewer then says the French are stupid and the Ming should have won. And Luke says the French are arrogant because of their large number of military victories over the past 400 years.
I just love that's like the French are arrogant. Source citation needed. Like every French person.
In the question, I think this is the question too. He calls them they're a bunch of pansies.
Yeah,
he uses the word. And also throughout this whole time, Kieran Elliott takes these vague shots at French people.
Yeah, do the Scottish have like a beef with the French that?
I think it's just like they just felt like Europe haters. I don't know. I don't know.
I can see that.
But it's a couple of times in this one.
Luke is researching. So Commoner argues that the pull gun is a better firearm. Luke says that the pull gun is more archaic because it doesn't fire instantly, which is a good point. He says a musket, you could pull the trigger and it fires, versus a pull gun, you have to pull like the flame and then take it to the gun, and it takes, the fuse goes down. So it's on instant fire, so it's not going to be as quick. Lucas.
I got the most reliable source, Quora. It says, do French people like the Scots and Scotland? The first answer is yes, we do. We bloody do.
There you go. You heard it here.
Yeah, facts. No cap,
French
just
people
facts.
Say
here.
bloody.
Well, no, I think that was like that might have been a Scottish.
All right, let's
keep going. We gotta
not important.
We gotta end this.
We gotta get to our final thoughts here.
Back on the pull gun, Jonathan says it's more efficient. He disagrees with Luke and says that due to the number of shots, it's you get more value. Luke brings his own pistol on set, and Jeff asks him what the misfire rate is in real life, which, wait, I thought this show is real life.
Right.
So, and Luke says it's 15% and 10% if it's like in pristine condition or something like that. So the show is not real.
He had to wipe the shit off that answer after pulling it out of his ass. Like,
that is so
made up. Is he counting it at the range? Yeah. He's like, I have
16%
out of 100 shots.
Yeah, that is like the most made up thing.
When my weapon is in pristine condition, it gets 10%.
Imagine you're at the range and Luke comes in with his flintlock, his feather hat.
So I was thinking about, I know this is running long enough, but I was thinking about when they were talking about the wheel lock being used in duels and stuff, I was like, imagine like the trend right now with gun culture is like if you're a concealed carry guy, you have to have like the most high tech, like you have to have a Glock with a flashlight and a red dot on it, and it's got to have like an extended mag, and you got to have them both like tucked in your belt. And I can't wait till the trend like goes back and like you got gun channels where guys are like, I actually carry a vintage wheel lock musket, and there's like slow motion footage of him firing it. Honestly, I just like the feel. I just like the feel of it, and
if you can't hit someone in one shot, then I guess you shouldn't be carrying.
Do I keep powder in the chamber? Yes, because if you're not keeping powder in the chamber, you may as well not be carrying, because when the time comes and you need to use it, like you're gonna have to reload and you're gonna fumble it. So
the powder ruins my jeans. Moving on, a commenter asks if the rapier would have been as effective without the mangooch, and Max sarcastically says he doesn't know if a weapon losing its main component would make it less effective.
Is that a main component, though?
I mean,
honestly,
the combination, yeah. She's saying like a rapier on its own is going to be less effective without the gooch. So
sure.
And lastly, a commenter says the mine shouldn't have gotten as many kills because a musketeer would have seen any other sword sticking out of the ground as inferior. And he also says the mine would have worked on a more primitive opponent. So interesting choice of words. I wonder which warriors on the show he considers more primitive. Considering none of them are like Cro-Magnon, like cavemen. Which ones are primitive? Could it be the Zondays? Maybe I'm thinking as Commodore. So I don't know. Commodore, if that's you, reach out. Which ones do you think are primitive?
They were tactical geniuses.
They were. Nothing primitive about them. Jonathan argues that they're
like modern though.
I know, yeah, they're from like after the Musketeers. Anyways,
yeah,
sorry.
the butt of the joke is the Commodore,
right? Yeah.
So Jonathan argues that they can put more than just swords in the mine, so they could put treasure, water. Like they joke that they could put like French snails.
So it's like the middle of a 5-on-5 fight, and some guy's just like, "Ooh, oui, treasure."
Yeah. So he says they could put more than just
some water.
And also says that the Ming warrior can kill from miles away, which is an advantage. He doesn't have to be there, and that it can cause psychological damage because you pull a weapon out of the ground or water or treasure, and all of a sudden shit starts exploding. That could do psychological damage to the other people. How psychological damage factors into the sim? I'd be curious.
Not relevant to the sim.
How many kills does the psychological damage of the landmine get you?
Yeah.
The miles away the Ming warrior could kill from. There's a guy. He's dead.
Well, I sort of get his point. Theoretically, like if this is not Deadliest Warrior, the idea that you can damage an enemy and not be anywhere near them is powerful. He also said that you could, I think Max said this, how the fuck does he know? You could be remote and like pull a string to set it off yourself when you have eyes on your enemy. He like does this. So landmine is more than just like pull a sword out. There's different variations of it.
You know what they don't mention that was the most common one me and Brandon just found was one that was rigged to a tripwire. You know, like
that would make sense.
They talk about the tripwire.
Okay, yeah, they do. I was gonna say like a modern landmine.
If they would have mentioned that on the show, maybe I wouldn't have bitched for 20 minutes.
Like a modern booby trap. You know,
this episode would be a lot shorter.
Let's get some final thoughts.
Yeah, let's keep it short.
Let's wrap
tight,
this shit
people. Let's go. Let's start with Matt.
Okay, you already know. Craig's like, who goes on for the longest here? Let's go, Matt. I guess just in my closing statements, I've already relayed my complaints about the show. I think the biggest gap is between flintlock musket and Nesta Bees. Every weapon has a decent weapon gap, has a decent kill gap between it, though. I honestly think it makes sense because the Musketeer weapons seem to be more advanced and made to a higher caliber. The Ming's biggest strength was their numbers as an army, and their weapons reflect those of an army and rely more on volley fire. I think the Musketeer would get the win because of the small scale encounter, and their armor is an advantage, though I wish things had been tested more. Overall, I thought this was a really out of nowhere good episode. I didn't remember much about it, but I actually ended up really, really enjoying it. The Ming are really fascinating. They were a pleasure to research. I've been spoiled because back to back I've gotten to research the Zonde and the Ming, and I was like, these are like interesting and cool things that I would have never heard of if not for Deadliest Warrior. So I know we bitch about this show a lot. That's probably the shining achievement of this show is teaching dumb guys about like certain cultures, niche cultures. Last thing I'll say is this disproves Sala's theory from the Maori versus Shaolin episode, where Sala says the Shaolin only wins because the computer's Chinese. This disproves the theory because the Ming lose.
I am so glad you remembered that. That was going to bring it up.
Yo, if you tear the Musketeer's arm off, I'll still get to you. Matt says it the best.
You can tear my arm off, I'll still get to you.
Okay. Scott, you want to go next?
Yeah, Musketeer probably deserves the dub. They have the better tech. They have the better armor. I think the numbers are a little skewed. Like you said, I think the Nest of Bees probably deserves a little bit more kills. The landmine probably should get less. That was a dumb weapon, but overall it was fun. It was cool weapons, cool warriors.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Scott.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I mean,
all right, let's end the episode.
Yeah.
If you want to see more of Scott, tune in a pretty good podcast.
Do it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I cut you off. You any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll lay mine out here.
beat that horse.
I've harped on the mine enough. I'll skip over that. They say armor
Your thoughts
pretty
are
much
very mechanical, Lucas. You should write more loosely.
They say armor pretty much won the day, but I don't really even agree with that. In my opinion, just the fact of having a musket and a wheel-locked pistol, I think technology won the day. And also when they're covering the results on the show, you can look forward to the sound 3 more times.
38-37 on the episode, 39-24, and 39-39 are all of the in the final battle.
These are 2 very unique warriors that have very, very different purposes.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I just think by their just core nature of what this type of warrior was created for, the Musketeers, this fit their bill a lot better.
Yeah.
They fare better in Deadliest Warrior setup where it's 5-on-5. I just also want to thank anyone who has made it to this far in the podcast. We look at all your comments. Go ahead, post whatever you want about this episode. We talk about all your comments way too much in our group chat. Each and every one of you, everything that you mention, everything you bring up, we're like, oh, check out what this guy found. Check out, check out what this guy.
You shot him in the ding ding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we seriously appreciate everyone who watches these, especially if you've made it to 2 hours, 20 minutes, whatever we're at this point.
I think we're past that point. But
the real Shinos out there, the Liam Hubbards, who else?
There's
Matt Darton.
There's a number of them, but let's move on.
Let's wrap it up.
Craig,
shouts out. I don't have too many thoughts. Like I said before, I don't think I watched this episode before, so it was a treasure to watch basically a new Deadliest Warrior episode. And yeah, I thought it was a good episode. There's some bullshit in there. You learn some stuff. The tests are fake, but the information is real. That should be the motto of the show. Yeah, I dug it. So
nice.
But yeah, that should put a cap on it, gentlemen. As Lucas said, thank you so much for watching and tuning in for 22 episodes.
Yep.
And we'll see you next time for...
it would be the Comanche versus the Mongol.
Can't wait to film that.
Yes.
All right, see you guys. And remember, stay
deadly.